Hello, hello. Good morning, good morning. Good evening to you. Um, let's jump right into talking about good old Daemon, because there's nothing better. Um, so, so I know I saw a comment earlier that mentioned like, wait, weren't you going to do a whole video on Daemon Targaryen perhaps him being a hero? Is this in lieu of it? And it's like, no, it's not. But I do realize doing my last over analyzing that I needed I needed a little more time, because I realized like if someone were to ask me like what was the worst thing that Daemon did, I would have said, oh well, he did kill that Sea Lord of Braavos' son. And then once I sort of spent more time like analyzing um, the Sea Lord of Braavos' son incident, Daemon comes out of it looking much better once you kind of stop and go, well, wait a minute, this guy was like like a political exile who was perhaps looking for status and honor, and he comes from a culture where they just jump into duels, and he's the one that challenged Daemon. Like, we have no idea really what went down. Like, Daemon gets invited to Driftmark and is like, yeah, I came because Corlys is saying that maybe I should marry Lena. And then this Sea Lord's son's like, you come in here wanting to marry Lena? I challenge you to a duel. And it's like, well, whoa, like it could have been like Daemon was completely ambushed by this situation. And it hadn't even occurred to me until I did my overanalyzing like section on it. And so I kind of realized like going forward that there's a few other instances where Daemon might have done something bad that we need to look at again before I'm even willing to say he did anything bad. Mainly, there's one about the execution of Vaemond Velaryon. Is there any chance that he was actually having an affair with Nettles and things like this? But the because really, like, now going through Daemon Targaryen's life, like, man, he might be like, even he might not even just be like neutral compared to the other characters. He may be like fairly squeaky clean. And history has really done him dirty, considering that the guy has all of the power in the world, could have conquered the world, and just like lets his brother rule, gives up the stepstones, like steps away from power all the time. Got this super chat about Daemon. It says this puzzling thing is that Daemon, although he supposedly slept with hundreds of women, he doesn't have any kids prior to his marriage with Lena. Any theories? Could Trystane Truefire be his illegitimate child? Well, I will say that Gildane definitely throws in some shade, saying when he has his first child, Aegon III, where he says his first legitimate child, and you're like, well, who are these illegitimate children? Because we have not heard of any illegitimate children in the story. And the story is that Daemon used to hang out at these brothels, but he was also captain of the Gold Cloaks, and he would have to go and enforce laws and collect taxes and do all sorts of things as master of law, and then head of the Gold Cloaks and things like that. And he was with Mysaria, the dancer, and Mysaria is a dancer in the books, not a sex worker. I understand that there might be some conflation of those terms, but we have nothing in the story that actually says that Mysaria was a sex worker. It just says she was a dancer. And she might be dancing in establishments that have sex work, but so we have no definitive proof that Daemon was having sex with sex workers. Like, we have none of that. We know that he was with Mysaria, who was a dancer. So it is a supposedly slept with hundreds of women, because we have no idea how many women he's sleeping with. We have, I imagine that he's a dude and he spends 10 years in the Stepstones. You know, maybe there's some camp followers um, in that situation. Maybe he's having sex with some sex workers there. Maybe he had a girlfriend in the Stepstones. We don't know. Was Massaria in the Stepstones? We have no idea where Massaria goes for 20 years. She just disappears and then comes back. So, it may very well be that he just was not that sexually active. We have no real proof that he was this Matt Smith like kind of character at all. Well, actually, even the Matt Smith character shows him kind of being a not being able to get it up. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like brought up this question to see if anybody had any ideas on like stuff he did bad, because there's nothing really that really points to him. Blood and Cheese, like, do we have any proof that Blood and Cheese was Daemon? I understand that there's some accusations that it was Massaria, but do we know that it was Daemon? And could it have just been Laurie Strong and things like that? There's a lot of these maybes and implications, like, well, maybe it was Daemon that like hired Carl Corbray to kill Laenor. Maybe it was Daemon that like burned down Harrenhal. But we have no proof of things. We just have these like accusations that say Daemon did these things and nothing. Oh, was anyone else today? Was anyone else today years old when they realized that the continents are called Westeros, Eastos, Sotheros, brilliant or lazy? Thank God there isn't a Northeros. Maybe in the fanfic. Um, the funny thing about Essos is that the term Essos is never used in the books. That is a fan creation. So we don't know if Essos. I don't even know. There's some questions of whether or not it might have been in the World of Ice and Fire. I don't even think it's in the World of Ice and Fire. I think it's in the maps thing. Maybe the maps like book. But there's no. Oh, they used the term Essos in the World of Ice and Fire. That's too bad. But they don't use it anywhere in. I mean, the World of Ice and Fire is an odd book, but never, George. Put it this way: George has never written the word Essos in any of his writings. It's never used in the main story. It's never used in Fire and Blood. They always use across the Narrow Sea. They always use that in the Free Cities. They don't use Essos. They use Westeros. And I don't think Sotheros is ever used either. Um, it is, obviously it's lazy, but but it'd be very interesting to know what Essosi like probably have a different name for their continent. I think, and even do they even use Westeros? Like, do Essosi ever use Westeros? They always say like the land of the sunset or something, right? Um, Westeros. Danny uses the term Westeros. She says like I am from Westeros to people, but there's a question of whether or not like anybody else uses these terms. Like it might not be what they call themselves. And this is quite common in like language. Like uh, you know, we call the Chinese Chinese. They don't call themselves Chinese. They call themselves Middle Kingdom people. We call Germans Germans. They do not. They they call themselves Deutschland. The And stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's funny because speaking of a fanfic, like there's had had a fan like been that lazy, people would have been like, "Come on, Westeros and Essos, that's stupid." But like, George can get away with it because he's George, you know. Um, let's see here. The world of ice and fire is almost fan fiction, says Carmine. There is a lot of truth to that because uh the writing style and the language used, like the words used, is completely different. It's very very clear. Um, because for the fanfic, we do a lot of like term searching to see like, is this a word that George uses? And like George will not use words, but they'll appear in the world of Ice and Fire. So like the writers and editors of that, like George and Linda and any editors, like didn't have the same rigor of like being like, well, what word would George use? And because they'll just use words that George never uses, you know. Um, I'm waiting for the World of Ice and Fire fanfic as written by Trey the Explainer. Perhaps other academics in their field who are fans. That's a really good idea. To have like a different Maester perspective with a different Maester history. Like I would love, just a fanfic Fire and Blood, like written by a different person about the life of Daemon Targaryen would be great, because Gildane says like, oh, to some people it was a hero, and then he sits there and he just trashes him. So like, you could definitely have like a history from a different person's perspective, like a Septon or just actually the text of Mushroom, like we actually get Mushroom's tale or something, or Septon Eustace's tale. All of these sorts of things would be they'd be so much more fun than like some of the stuff that's coming out. Like that's a very good that's a very good kind of idea that they could have had, like an actual like biased perspective of events from a different dude's like point of view. um why not, um right off topic, will Bran die one last time for the final successful timeline to play out? Will Bran take a lethal amount of sweet sleep, um like the sleeping pills in George R. R. Martin's other works? The I mean, I think that it depends who you mean Bran. You mean like present day Bran? Because in my personal like theory belief, time traveling Bran did die, and it was a lethal situation that where he is back in time and his body is dead. He falls on that spike, that ice pyre, and so time traveling Bran is stuck in the past because he did that lethal situation. While present day Bran is the one that's like gonna go forward and like break the loop. Um, so it's kind of like kind of both of those things are true simultaneously. But I think present day Bran is there to break the loop. Uh, we just it can't be any other way, because if Bran, like, you'd have to reset the story then, right? And be like, okay, like halfway through the Winds of Winter, we're gonna restart restart the story, you know, and see how it plays out after a time loop has been changed. Um, yeah. Um, Apparently uses Essos in the Rogue Prince and Princess and the Queen. I couldn't find it in my search. Let me try this again. Maybe I did that wrong. Up. I am wrong. I am wrong. Um, my search was pushed down because of the Worlds of Ice and Fire. Yes, he uses Essos once in the Rogue Prince and Essos once in Princess and the Queen. I was wrong. I'm sorry for anyone who had their mind blown. It has to be put back together. There's a line in the Rogue Prince where he says, "The Stepstones, the rocky chain of islands between Dorne and the disputed lands of Essos, have long been a haunt of outlaws." And then He says the young princess boarded the cog gay abandon. Aegon with Stormcloud, Viserys clutching his egg to set sail for Essos. Um, man, sorry about that. The but man, what a though. Still, I don't think they anyone in Essos calls it that themselves. How much in Fire and Blood is this? I wonder how many more times in Fire and Blood then. Was that I guess he uses it about 5 or 6 times in Fire and Blood. Damn. Extended the power of the Iron Throne across the narrow sea to Essos. Camp follower, disputed lands of Essos, vast fields of Essos, grim news out of Essos. It's so much better to have it just be across the narrow sea. But I have to correct myself there. Oh, who calls themselves Asian in the Middle Ages, let alone today, would be like Isosi. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a person who actually resides in Asia calling themselves Asian. I don't know of any. I mean, obviously, like Asian is the term that uh, um, people whose heritage comes from that area who reside in the West. People will use the term Asian, but I don't know. Like, I've never heard like a Chinese person call themselves, a Yajoren. Like, they tend to say either like they're a jungle ren. They sometimes will say they're a yellow. They'll actually use Huang ren, Huang Zhong ren. Um, uh, I mean, they certainly use those terms for the continents, but never heard anyone say like in my personal experience like Yajo ren, Fei. I've heard African like Feijo ren, but yeah, it's funny. Last week I watched everything everywhere all at once, and it's a there's some funny dialogue in it because there the the director is like a Taiwanese Hong Kong like American guy, and there's definitely like some terms that he uses that the script uses that are a bit weird. So at one point, um, they're in their laundromat, and she calls somebody a la wai, and la wai like literally means outsider person, which or foreigner, which is like if you're in China and there's a white person, they'd be called a la wai, and it's a little weird because like they don't use la wai in Taiwan, um, but also like they're in America, so the person wouldn't be a foreigner. But at the same time, there are Chinese people who, when outside of China, when referring to a white person, will call them a la wai. Like I've been called a la wai by Chinese people outside of China, where I'm like, how am I a foreigner? We're both like you're in America. I'm not the foreigner. I've so it's kind of funny that there's this scene where Michelle Yeoh uses La Wai, because she's also like conceivably been in America 20 years. I mean, I could see it happening, but it was just a little weird. Like I was like, "What? She used the word foreigner," and in the subtitles they just call them like they just use white person at the bottom, and I was like, I guess. Um, it was a funny one. I mean, it's still in the realm of believable. And then later she calls a white person Dabiza, which is like big nose, and I think they got some crap for it because big nose is like a term people use to call white people. It's not as derogatory as you think. It's somewhat derogatory, but it's also not that derogatory because like they don't think big noses are necessarily ugly. Like, but I kind of related it to like the term slant eyes. Like slant eyes is a really odd term in the West because on the one hand it's derogatory, but on the other hand, Westerners actually like admire Asian eyes at the same time. So it's they're almost equivalent. Like to be called a big nose, like they admire the big nose, they like the strong nose, but at the same time, I was just called big nose, and like that's kind of derogatory too. So it's kind of the equivalent of slant eyes. But Michelle Yeoh calls this woman Big Nose, and the character, the actress playing the white person that was called Big Nose, does kind of have a large nose, and she happens to be Jewish. And so like they got a bunch of shit like, oh my god, like you just like she just threw out an anti-Semitic term, and it's like, first of all, Michelle Yeoh, like she's a Chinese immigrant, like she's not going to understand like the difference between Jewish people and Gentile people. Like that's just not on her radar. But it's like a lot of these weird things to think about when thinking about like terms and where you're from. And anyway, this is just a long rabbit hole that I've been going down. The HBO showdown played The Wealth of House Stark. The HBO show downplayed The Wealth of House Stark. Please do the same please don't do the same in your fanfic. Also, I think Bran will become an immortal god king. That's an interesting idea. There was an idea I had that at some point, like the only thing that would save Westeros was to have like mass like control over everyone through like the werewood, like everyone being kind of linked in at once in some sort of like big communist systematic like way, because that's the way a lot of George R. R. Martin's like stories work, that this like hive mind takes over. But when the show ended the way it ended, I kind of said, that makes sense too. So I kind of think that was George's idea. I don't necessarily like want to end the fanfic like this exact same way as the show, but I think like Bran being king or something, or some ambiguous ending maybe. I kind of had this idea that like Sansa entering the werewood net at the end and like trying to do the loop that Bran is failing at or something might be an interesting way to end things. New Kill the Fun theory. Blue winter roses are a scam. The glass in the glass gardens are green and yellow tinted. That's why they only grow in the north. That it's a that it's like the light thing. Does that work with the color of the petals? I know you can literally like change the color of leaves through colored glass, but can you change the color of petals? Oh, I guess so. I'm looking at some pictures that through like dye in the water, you can influence the food coloring in the water. You can influence the color of the flower petal. I don't know about the color of the light though. Huh? That's something to research. The Hound's Tourney money subplot is a funny bit. Well, the question is like, I think everybody kind of, even George recognizes that like the gold was too heavy for him. Um, and the and so like there's no way he'd be able to carry all this money around. But this is actually a real problem with Dungeons and Dragons in general. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, there is like way too much reliance on gold pieces, and like you go and you defeat a dragon and there's like 1,000 gold pieces. Well, guess what? You're not carrying 1,000 gold pieces. Like that's just like no, like But at the same time, like they list these prices like, oh, your plus one ring of protection is is going to be like 10,000 gold. Well, like Jesus, like where are you getting 10,000 gold pieces? Like I was reading that those gold bars that you can't even like if one is on the ground, you can't actually even like pick it up because your fingers are like slippery. And so there's actually a scene in Die Hard with a Vengeance where Samuel L. Jackson like picks up a gold brick and then thinks it's heavy and leaves it behind, but he wouldn't have actually even been able to pick it up. Um, there's another funny scene. I think it's in what's that? Three Kings, the movie with George Clooney and Ice Cube and Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, where they go down to steal all the gold and they put it in some bags and they lift up the bags and the bags all fall apart. Yeah. So, um, Michelle Yeoh is Malaysian, but the point still applies. Yeah, I mean, the family in I mean, Michelle Yeoh is Malaysian, and the family in the story is a bit odd because they're speaking a weird mix of Cantonese and Mandarin. They never really get into their family background, and like where exactly they're from and why they'd be speaking the way they do. Um, there's some little things here and there that are kind of weird, like Stephanie Shu like is trying to tell her grandfather that she has a girlfriend and she can't remember the word for girlfriend, and you're like, come on. Like of all the words you're gonna forget, it's not like girlfriend. Like girlfriend is like that's like week one of Mandarin. You're gonna know the word for friend and the word for girl. Like you're gonna get that one. Like there's some funny ones in there where I'm just like, what? Girlfriend? How did that one go by? Um uh but yeah. Um so she's Chinese Malaysian, but the Chinese community in Malaysia retain more Chinese culture than those in the mainland. Uh it depends what you think like real, like there's dispute on like what do you think real authentic anything culture is, like why what makes one thing real and another thing not real, like that's the main question, like what you know um I remember when I was living in Chicago, they wanted to open a KFC in the Chinatown on the south side of Chicago. And I remember the community was like, "Oh, we don't want KFC because that's not like a Chinese like thing, and we don't want this like chain there." And at the time, I was like, "KFC, like this is the most Chinese thing ever. Chinese people love KFC. KFC is everywhere in China. They love it. How is KFC not Chinese?" And like, what makes something Chinese is really kind of like an interesting question. Like, what makes something authentic? Uh, um, in America, you can go get Nando's peri peri South African chicken. Well, the peri peri pepper is Portuguese, and it was brought from Latin America by Portuguese traders to not even South Africa, but um, the I'm totally it's early in the morning here. I'm forgetting where they it's Mozambique. The pepper was brought to Mozambique, and then the South African guys were in exile in Mozambique for a while, picked up the pepper there, and then brought it back, and then put it on their chicken. Got popular, and then it came to America. And you're like, well, is this chicken what Nando's chicken like? What is it like? Is it South African? Because there's so many steps of like culture there. So I think it's kind of a pointless discussion to talk about like what is like real Chinese culture. Like, I mean, I would say that there's something very important to I mean, one could go the other way and say that there's something very important and authentic to the experience of Mao, to be authentically Chinese. One could very much say that like the trauma of Mao is at the heart of all Chinese experiences. And then you're like, well, I guess that doesn't make these Chinese in Malaysia or Taiwan or Singapore like Chinese. The one of the most like authentically like Chinese like experiences, the trauma of Mao. Like so. What are you gonna do? I mean, if you're an American and you've never eaten a hamburger, are you an American? I don't know. You know. Thoughts on Ned as a ruler, husband, father, and friend? You know, the remarkably, we don't get that much on him. I mean, we get like 2 chapters of like Ned and Kat together. He seems to be a pretty nice guy. He seems to be pretty conciliatory. Like he builds a sept for Kat, the first northerner to ever do that kind of thing. Like that's pretty nice. Bringing in a septon. He tries to be nice to his daughters and bring in singers. Arya wants to fight and he allows her training. He seems to be pretty for the Middle Ages, and considering his environment, he's a pretty open, progressive guy. So I think on a personal level, he seems to be pretty likable. I think he doesn't like Littlefinger, but I don't think you should like Littlefinger. Littlefinger should creep you out. So I think there's a lot of things that he does really well. Let's see here. Here we go. Hold on a second. Hello. How goes it?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm joined
Uh,
by Will, the editor. Um, did you want your picture here, or does it matter to you?
it doesn't matter to me at all. Can throw it on there if you want. But
Okay.
yeah. First of all, I'm gonna check the chat to see if the echo is happening. I don't
Here,
want
let
to
me
bother people.
put on my headphones just in case, because even though I have echo cancellation, I don't know. All right. Let's make sure. So there's going to be no chance of echo now.
Okay, I'm gonna say some nonsense here, and then I'm gonna look and see if there are people mad at me for sounding bad.
Oh, yeah. So how are things going?
Things are great. So I was jumping in because you just kind of made a point about how we go through the chapters in the fanfic looking
Oh
for
yeah.
words that George doesn't use, and the World of Ice and Fire is not as careful as we are. So I wanted to kind of supplement that by giving people some fun words that you can't use in the fanfic and that I've had to take out. I got a little list here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Um, so from the Citadel, we had a desire to talk about experiments and science and research and projects, and all of those words are banned. George doesn't use any of them.
Yeah, I found
So
that really
research is
fascinating. I found that so fascinating. Like that this he has this entire institution about like science and theories. I mean, and none of those regular things like hypothesis, like stuff that like regular scientists would like use or something like that. Test, and none of it was. Yeah, say that list again, because some of them were really quite
So
surprising.
experiment, science, research, and project. Also, okay, the chat has now started saying I'm only on the left side of their ear.
Yeah,
It's too good to be true.
I'm only getting left side. Let me see if I can. Let me see if there's anything, um, uh, as well. But Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything with on my side that that could
Mhm.
affect that. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, only on the left side. I'm only getting it on one side as well. Um,
Hang on, let me. How about now? Any different?
yeah, no, just on one side. One thing I commonly get is, I mean, I do get this with every once in a while on a record, like all of a sudden my mic will drop to like one side, and then I have to like re bring down the uh the drop down menu. Um, so you might want to check like what mic is inputting.
All right. Yeah, I'll maybe plug it back in. Give me just a second.
Sure thing. And while he's doing that, I didn't like everything all at once. It's funny because I was watching the first half and I was like, this is kind of mid, and then the second half kicks in, and I think the second half is way better than the first. Like the first half, there's a lot of like random exposition that could have been cut, and then the second half hits, and it's just so much better than the first. But um, never understood the baby swap. Why would Gilly agree? I think didn't John convinced her that um that if the baby stayed, that Mance would want to that that they'd want to kill it. Or no, they convinced that the other baby would want to be killed. So I think it was more that Gilly wanted to save Dala's baby, which really kind of like goes into like Gilly's kindness. I guess she must have like spent some. The two babies must have spent time together for a couple weeks or something, and that she would have like gotten attached to it. But it's a pretty. You're right that it's a pretty big thing. Like, why should I care about somebody? Why should I abandon somebody else's baby? And why should I think my own baby is safe? Um, Leaving it behind with these crazy people at the wall in the middle of a war zone. It's a bit much. Um, Considering like she should have just been like, just take both babies. I don't like sneak out both babies. I'll take them both, you know. um I think you're right that it's not a single discussion kind of thing. The and like John's decision of the baby swap is not the option I would have done. Like I would have tried to sneak out both babies, like because I wouldn't trust them not to kill any of these babies. Somebody would have been like, man, Craster was a king in the way. He was king of his own little castle. I guess I'm gonna. um, and it's funny is that George wrote that chapter twice to be doubled, which is like the biggest waste of time. I think I was doing my worst chapters, and I was just like John 2. Like, why did we need this chapter twice? Like, what a waste of time. I guess you were really trying to get your word count up, George. Oh, let's see what else we got. Will, how are you sounding? Hmm. Well, now I'm not. I'm just getting a little buzzing from in my ear from Will. So um, let's see here. Tinfoil resurrected. John will partially be Bloodraven, looking to fulfill a Song of Ice and Fire prophecy. He's interested in Danny because she reminds him of Shira's Sea Star, making the ending betrayal more impactful. Huh. It's interesting. The I mean, George loves his little love triangles, and Bloodraven is largely based on uh, Elric, um, character, who he and his cousin are both in love with their cousin, and they fight over her, and so the Bloodraven Bittersteel Shira Sea Star triangle is stolen from Michael Moorcock for the most part. Um, and it's something that George kind of shoved in fairly late in the game. Um, I'm trying to think of like when the first time a Blackfire is even mentioned. Is Blackfire is even mentioned in A Storm of Swords? Um, it's funny these little things like that, like determining when whether yeah, Blackfires were in A Storm of Swords, but I don't think they're in a Clash of Kings. Uh, no, yeah, they're not in a Clash of Kings, but they're in A Storm of Swords. So it's this like, like when did George come up with this idea? Like from the beginning, George knew that there was definitely going to be a Targaryen succession dispute. He mentions that very, very early in his writing that there might have been this other line of Targaryens out there, um, but he doesn't make it clear that there's a Blackfire dispute until A Storm of Swords, and certainly not like filling in like the Bloodraven Bittersteel. Let's try Will again here. Hello, welcome back, welcome back.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, I think
You
you're.
hear me at all now?
I can hear you. I can hear you. You're still in one ear, but I think one ear is. I think it's fine. It's not.
All right. Well, I'll do my spiel real quick,
It's
and I'll
not.
get out.
No, it's
Fix
not.
it later.
It's not so bad. It's not the. A lot of people were complaining about echoes and things like that, but with my last people where I
My
really
voice
fucked
is
up.
bad too. I'll be, 5 minutes. But okay, so back to the other stuff. So we talk about experiment, science, research, project. There's also interrogations. So James does
Yeah,
not interrogate the. Nobody gets interrogated in the series. People are put to the question.
yeah, that's really weird. Because put to the question and being questioned sharply like is also torturing. So is all interrogation. It's just like established that interrogation is torture.
Yeah. Basically, linguistically, that's what he's done. Another one that shocked me was obsessed. Littlefinger's not obsessed with Catelyn because no one is obsessed with anything.
That's funny.
It doesn't exist.
No one can ever be
Also,
obsessed.
speaking of, yeah,
Yeah.
you can't put it in. If it's in, we take it out. Speaking of Littlefinger, lucrative. Nothing's lucrative.
Although
That word
that's
just
funny.
isn't in there.
Huh.
And then the weirdest one to me, the one that shocked me and made me like check it under different spellings and be like, it has to be somewhere in there, is theater, which I think
Yeah.
you've mentioned before on the podcast. Like, I told you we can't have theater in this Arya situation. It
It's
just doesn't come up.
it's so
It's not
silly.
theaters.
I just don't understand that one at all, considering that like theaters go back to ancient Greece, like way back. And yet they're not using the word theater, they only use the word stage. It's so odd.
Mhm. They're houses, playhouses or something, but they're not theaters. So that was the fun extra information I had for people wondering, like behind the scenes editing. These are things that we have to look up and say, well, George doesn't use it. It's not part of this world, really. Um,
Yeah. And it does help. It's funny because it's one of those subconscious things. Like it's not like when I read The World of Ice and Fire that I kind of like recognized that this didn't that this wasn't George's writing, but something did seem off. You read it and you're like, huh, that doesn't sound like George. And then once you kind
yeah,
of
you can
get
tell, I think, right away.
yeah, and then later you're like, oh, well, one big aspect of it. I mean, there's ways, there's structures of the sentence. George doesn't write dates, and there's dates all over the place. I mean, he writes dates in Fire and Blood, but he doesn't write dates in the normal book. Um, but yeah, like, but then yeah, the language stuff. You're just like, oh, right, he never uses that word. Yeah. Recently, I was thinking about Brandon Sanderson because did you hear about the Brandon Sanderson controversy with the Wired article?
Yes, I saw all about it.
Because I started thinking about like Brandon Sanderson and like Stephen King and how they write so fast and how they just like and clearly this guy that had this hit piece against Sanderson like didn't like the way that Sanderson wrote. And
Fine.
which is fine. I think some people are like Sanderson's more about it being a storyteller rather than like being a writer. But it's funny to like to think about like the voice and how much time we spend like in the writing and editing trying to like mimic George's style to like get it the way it is. I wonder if George spends this much time.
George's style is really like specific. It doesn't have to be super deliberate. Maybe it's like just he's writing what is in his head from what he reads, but you can tell like we have to spend that time. It's
Yeah.
not natural to us.
No,
We haven't
no.
read all exactly what George has read. Although, reading some things that he has read is helpful if you want to write like him.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um, okay, so tiny little note. Everyone talks about amongst, or they really notice, oh, we put a bunch of amongst in, so that looks like George. Great, it's perfect. He doesn't entirely neglect among. He
Yeah.
has a more amongst. It seems like it would sound better in his mind. He just puts among in, and it just like depends on the word, directly after, if it's going to sound better.
It's like a 60-40 split, I would say, like among in the story, right? Like he does use
Mhm.
among, but like amongst is like
Pretty often.
I think
But
this
we'll
can.
get chapters where it's all amongst because people are like, well, this is the GRM word. We're going to do amongst. But that's not quite, accurate to the book.
This I actually thought of this the other day because so the new D&D movie is coming out and it's called Honor Among Thieves. And they actually use the phrase honor among thieves twice in the old D&D, but they always say honor amongst thieves.
I mean, among thieves sounds so much better to me. Even if you're trying to be old timey, amongst thieves,
Honor amongst
it's
thieves.
just my tongue.
It doesn't flow, right? Yeah, it doesn't. Honor among thieves
Yeah.
flows. Honor amongst thieves, like it. You're yeah, that one. I'd say you're trying too hard, and I would say that definitely
It's
for the title of a movie that's going to be on posters. Like I get it. Like they don't want to have honor amongst thieves. Like it was. I mean, the original D&D movie was really shit, but like for just a line in a movie, it's fine. But like you definitely don't want it on your poster.
no. And speaking of like try hard type stuff, like we've had five score be put in a chapter. George doesn't use five score; he says 100.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
It's
it's
true.
like you want it to seem old timey and correct, but you kind of go too far, and it's not even what he does.
Yeah. I think it's
These are the bits that we have to pick.
right. It's like the 2 and 20 stuff. Like he does say 2 and 20, but he also says 22. Like he does both, like
Yeah.
so it all kind of depends on the
But
context.
you just have to read. You read a bunch of his books, and then you kind of get a sense of like when he would do one or the other.
Yeah. Somebody asked me a while back, and I wanted to ask you the same question.
Mhm.
What do you think it is about George's writing that makes him such a star? Because he's not exactly the best at anything, you know. Like he's pretty good at a lot of things, but he's not really the best at anything, right? But so I just kind of said he was like the utility player. Like he's really good at a lot of different things, but he's not like the absolute best at one.
Yeah, if something stands out to me, it's the way like, paragraphs flow within themselves and one to the next. Like it's so easy to read a lot of one of his books at a time.
I I I
I kind of
I am really focused on known subject now, and like knowing like not just the fact that like one sentence ends with an idea that the next sentence is beginning with. Even on a paragraph level, he does it. Like every sentence like
Mhm.
flows to the next. It's very strange, except when he's like completely jumping in time, because he will do that like
Yeah.
the next day, and you're like, but that's like the next paragraph, or like a year later, But like, but I like he does like it's just a natural stream of consciousness, but it's a complicated stream of
Mhm.
consciousness. Like, but it seems so easy. I'm also I'm amazed how often he doesn't begin sentences with like the subject, like John. Like he uses a lot of prepositional phrases and stuff like that. But like every sentence begins in a unique way, and I'm impressed with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed how long his sentences are without seeming long. Because that's not the way
Yeah,
I
it's
write.
just
Yeah.
it's the trick of flowing, which is like hard to describe. But if you read, so I reread the whole series before the prologue chapter, in between those fanfic chapters we did, and so specifically for the when I was editing the prologue chapter, I felt like I had it like locked into my head. Like this is the way he flows, and I could try to like imitate that. And it's gotten worse and worse since then for me, at least, because I don't have it so clear in my mind anymore.
I
I would have
think
to
my
reread the whole series in between every one.
I think my favorite chapter that we've done so far has been prologue. I think it's just I think it just feels I think it feels so much like George, and it feels like what a prologue would be, and we were able to cover so many complicated topics, but it came out rather clear. I think we just did a like that's the one where I think I'm most proud of that one. Like I
Yeah,
think
obviously I'm not working on any of this. But I'm proud of being able to like contribute to that too.
yeah. I mean I like the Elaine chapter too, but I think Elaine it's more that like Elaine I'm proud of that we got so much plot shoved into one chapter because so much happens, but it doesn't flow and have the same like personality that the prologue does, where you like know who Maester John is as a character. He's so striking, and like so many complicated things are described in the chapter, and it's just a little cool story by itself. But
So the Elaine one is compact in terms of plot. We get a lot in there, but the prologue is compact in terms of character, which I think is kind of more GRM than the other one. We're
yeah,
able to figure out who this guy is so fast, and that is what carries the chapter because you have to like him.
yeah, and I like that. I like that we like Maester John even though he's a jerk. Like we like him even, which is weird because like yeah, but it's odd because it's like I kind of even though Chet is a horrible human being, I somehow like Chet after the Storm of Swords prologue, even though he's a dreadful, dreadful human being. I'm just like, huh, I really feel bad for the guy. He has a really bad life. Like,
Yeah.
or Merritt Frey as well. Like, I'm just like, oh, poor Merritt Frey. I mean, Merritt Frey is not nearly as bad as Chet. Merritt Frey is fine. What's the worst you can say about Merritt Frey? But like, you really feel bad that he dies at the end. You know, I think
Yeah.
I think Jamie called him a bully. That's about it. Poor Merritt
Oh,
Frey.
okay. But yeah, so he's able to be really compact and make us like these characters so fast, and I'm happy that we were able to do something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, each of the chapters I'm quite fond of. I mean, I really like the Hota chapters
Okay.
too and stuff like that. And
Kind of doing the same thing with Hota, because we're adding so much to Hota's character, and doing it
like,
pretty quick as well. We have more time with Hota. We have more chapters.
yeah, he'll be like the how like every book has one character who has like just a load of chapters. So there's like 15 Ned chapters in the first book, and there's
This
like
time it's Hota.
yeah, this time it's Hota. Like there's like 15. I think it's 15 Tyrion in Clash of Kings, and like it's a lot of Arya in both Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords. Just like so much Arya, and then she just disappears. It's just be 15 chapters. The Winds of Winter, 15 chapters of Hota.
Yeah, you said no new keys, but if you just have Hota become the new main character, then it's
We
kind
just
of
w-
like the same POV.
we just wouldn't have the space though. There wouldn't be the space for him.
Unfortunate. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll get off. We can try to fix the audio thing later. I don't want to interrupt the whole
Okay.
podcast. But last question. So, what did you think of Everything Everywhere? You
Um,
mentioned the point you were making, but not.
I would. It's funny because I watched it in two sittings. Because it's just being so busy, and so like after the first sitting, I was like, oh, this is kind of a cute movie, but it's nothing like super special. Because I didn't even think that the acting was very good in the first half. I thought there was a lot of like clunky dialogue in the first half, and then the second half happens, and I'm like, and they kick the acting up, and they kick the plot, and they kick the emotion up in the second half, and that's where it really becomes a great movie. I thought it was very, very good. It was I don't know if it's the kind of movie that I would say Best Picture for, but then again, all of the Best Picture movies like always are lacking like that. It's not like The Hurt Locker. I'm like, oh my god, The Hurt Locker, you know, that was Best Picture, or Shakespeare in Love. I have a I think I got a lot more out of it because I've spent a lot of time in East Asia, and that my wife is a Chinese American immigrant, and I mean, she was born in America, but her parents are
to it.
yeah. So she has a like little scenes like Michelle Yeoh running out and being awkward and not being able to say anything affectionate to her daughter, and then say you look fat is like a that's a very, very real like Chinese American kind of problem. And I think for my wife, she really connected and understood the movie, and it was really great. And you know, there's a lot of things I really appreciated, like just the character of Waymond, and people seeing his approach being real, you know, to life as being strong, not weak. And you know, it's not a perfect movie, but I think it's a really good movie. I think it's like you know, I definitely recommend it. The hype is kind of crazy. So everything's about expectations. Like if you go in thinking this is going to be the best movie ever, you're going to be disappointed. But if you go in being like, I don't know, then you're going to be like, oh, what a great movie. So
Yeah, I was lucky to watch it pretty early on in the whole thing before it was hyped up very much. So I was like, yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
a little bit long, but quite happy with it.
And I kind of realized that Michelle Yeoh, she's good in acting, and that she has to pretend to know less English than she does. Like she has to, right? It's so funny because
It's such a weird situation.
like Chinese Malaysians are pretty fluent in English, and then she plus she's been in Hollywood and been successful for 20 years, but like, you know, so like she knows how to speak, but like to have these scenes where she has to pretend to be like not understanding people's English and stuff like that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's totally like I completely buy the portrayal. I don't know if that would seem as true if like you know, I had that real life experience. Like, is everyone like, oh, this sounds kind of inauthentic? I don't know, but it sounds good to me.
And then I was also thinking about Jamie Lee Curtis and how Jamie Lee Curtis, she's such a pro that within like, and this is about like compact characters, right? Like within 4 seconds of meeting her character, we know everything about her. She has very little dialogue in the movie that's about her life, but like, you know her life because Jamie Lee Curtis is able to like make that character so clear in like 4 seconds, you know? And I'm like, oh, this is what happens when you have like an old pro like Jamie Lee Curtis is just like, boom, like you don't even need it. Like everything is there. Like, so I guess the more I talk, like usually the more I talk about a movie, the more I talk down the movie. But I think the more I talk about the movie, this one, I convinced myself that it's actually very, very good. And I laughed so hard when they introduced the bagel. Like my first time. Like that fucking line, like, I put everything was on the bagel. Everything. All of my sorrow, my terror, like my failures and anxiety. Sesame, garlic. I just like laughed so hard. Like Anyway, probably spoiling the movie for everybody.
Oh, doesn't matter. It's not the kind of movie you can spoil.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I'll jump off. I've been on for 20 minutes or something, and we'll fix the audio. I'll come back to a future episode.
Yeah, yeah. You're welcome back anytime. You have the link, and yeah, it's amazing. Like every time I get guests, like I seem to have audio problems. Like,
I don't know if this is you or me. We'll work it out together.
all right, sounds good.
All right.
All right,
Take
thanks.
care, everybody.
All right, thanks. Well, talk to you later. Okay, where were we? Oh, okay. So getting back to blue roses. Um, the there's no blue roses, but it's white roses, but they appear blue because you're in the greenhouse, and the greenhouse has blue glass, and so when everybody walks in, they think they're blue roses. Um, yeah, that'd be very that'd be very disappointing. But he does have George does put blue flowers and other stuff, so I feel like I think that it sounds like George to have regular blue. Plus, wasn't there blue flowers on the crown that he gives to uh that he gives to Liana? Um, so I think, even though that's funny, I think there's blue roses outside of the greenhouse. Um, Going to Taiwan for a wedding. Any recommendations for a big nose like me? Um, Taiwan is mainly about nature, kind of like America. Like a lot of Europeans will come to America and they'll be like, America was boring. I went to all these cities. I went to Chicago and St. Louis and Cleveland, and it was boring. And I was like, because all American cities are boring except for New York City. Like besides New York, like don't bother. America has incredible nature. Go camping. Go to Yellowstone. Go to the Grand Canyon. It's the same with Taiwan. There's nothing particularly interesting about Taipei. There's nothing interesting about Taichung, Tainan, Kaohsiung. What's interesting is the nature. So you should go to Taroko Gorge or Alishan if you have time. You have time for, I mean, no matter how many days you're here, you have enough time for Taroko Gorge. But like Alishan is also pretty beautiful, and that's that's what you go to. Like don't think like, oh, I want to see a different city. There's the cities are all the same. Like don't, or at least the differences you're not going to be able to notice. Like, you know, it's like, yes, in the South they speak Taiwanese and they have different political leanings and things like that. But and different food options, but you're not really going to notice it. It's just just go to Taroko Gorge, go can see some of the beautiful things there, and uh, you know um end of the fanfic. John works into Ghost, but also a revived Jon Snow by Melisandre. The nature of the soul, mind, and consciousness, which is the real Jon Snow. Element of existentialism, identity, horror. That does sound like, yeah. I mean, I could see that sounds a lot like Glass Flower and George's ideas. Um, I could see that being what George originally planned. Um, like, yeah, that's a good idea. Um, the so the glass flower is about this this android that has this very famous explorer named Chloronymus has downloaded his mind into this android. But of course, like the nature of existence is forgetting, and the nature of existence is mortality. And he's not really Chloronymus if he's an android with the memories of Chloronymus like in his mind. And so the android wants to do a body swap. There's a body swap woman who is scared of dying, so she wonders if maybe she would join, or actually, I forget. She's tricked into it, isn't she? But nonetheless, she gets to swap in the end, and she gets to go into Claranonymous' body, and Claranonymous' soul gets out into a little girl, and and all of a sudden now that character is going to die and has mortality and things like this, and there's a whole exploration of what it is to be who you are. So yeah, I think there's some things to get into that. Um, Observation in Catelyn 2 of Game of Thrones. Cat refers to everything in her room as hers, her bedchamber, her bath, her bed. Ned's there for a booty call. Huh. That's an interesting idea. I wonder if they have separate chambers, or if she just like considers if something is, oh, instead of our room, our, huh. That's a fascinating thing. I mean, I don't know if they have separate chambers, but like also the idea that she would consider, if they don't, that she would consider their shared property hers. Does she consider Winterfell on a larger level? Does she consider Winterfell hers because she wants it to go to Rob and things like this? It's co-owned, but at the same time, she doesn't feel like she's of the North and always feels like an outsider. It's an interesting contradiction. Um, her bed, her bath. That's fascinating. I'll have to relook at Catelyn 2 because that's something I had not noticed. Um, that's something. Huh. Then again, George also writes weird stuff like uh, like Lewin being with Kat for all of her births and stuff like that, and then later says she was at River Run and was Lewin at River Run, or there's no werewood south of the neck or north of the south of the neck, and that being changed, stuff like that. So, um, hmm, hmm, yeah, getting into her idea. Interesting. That's interesting. Thoughts on John Con as a foil to Tywin? He wants to be like Tywin, but does anti-Tywin stuff like saving Tyrion. Will he throw out his morals? I personally think that I mean, keep in mind that John Con is going to have grayscale, and so John Con's kind of slowly going crazy too. But I think it's fitting for John Con to try to become more and more like Tywin as time goes on, and realize that like Tywin is the way to go, and slowly lose his humanity. Um, it is really sad that like saving Tyrion is what you know ends him, right? His kindness ends him, and so overall, because in Tywin's mind, he's doing everything for his family too, but he's being so horrible, and that how you can turn love, how you can turn and twist love into something else, um, uh, in these situations, like Tywin literally thinking oh, this is all for the best of my family. This is for my best of my kids. I'm gonna I'm going to abuse my child because I care about them. That's kind of in his mind. Um, so yeah, I think John Con is so driven by this idea of Rhaegar's legacy manifesting in Aegon, that in a sense he's you know in the same mindset as Tywin. I think he's just becoming more. I think it fits that he become more and more like Tywin. Um, for the World of Ice and Fire and Blood fanfic, in terms of subjects, I really want a full dissertation on Dornish law. Absolutely, absolutely. And because it does really get into um, it does really get into what um Doran Martell would be doing, and why are things better down there, and what's so great about the Rhoynish. because you can't have this like book of Dornish law that's just about succession. Like that's not that hard, So, um, so I do think like getting into what exactly the Dornish were doing right is would be fascinating. But of course, like a lot of it might be anachronistic though. Like when did we really start caring about the people? Like 19th century, 18th century. So, mm. um, favorite chapter is Feast for Crows prologue, hands down. It's true. I really feel bad for Pate. Um, and all of the people. Um, oh, what D&D books edition are you talking about? First edition AD&D DMG has no honor among thieves. I was talking about the movie. I was talking about the movie with Marlon Wayans and Jeremy Irons that they use the line "honor amongst thieves" a couple times in that, and that it's I mean, the movie is crazy. Now, the D&D editions, I only know like first edition stuff. Like if you're gonna ask me about stuff that goes beyond like Unearthed Arcana and like second edition and stuff like that, I don't know anything about any of that. I kind of know the original D&D and the original AD&D, and that's about it. Um, let's see here. Just reading these weird Vargo Hote things in the chat. Um, yeah, I have a younger YouTuber friend who's moved to Taiwan to teach English. Ton of hiking. Yeah, it's all about hiking. I think Taiwan is like 65% wooded, and which is like more percentage of their country is covered by nature than Canada. Like it's crazy kind of stuff, but like um they do it's not because they're so enlightened, but it's just that it's very mountainous. You can't really build on the mountains, but there's just it's a lot of cool nature here. um let's see here. I'm not liberal, I'm Dornish, it's my culture. I've got to being into fighting and fucking is okay. Undying predicting futures before being destroyed establishes time traveling brand rules, otherwise only seen in George R. R. Martin. Paradoxes do not apply. Changes persist. Um, I'm trying to get all this together. So like when we talk about George R. Martin's like time travel, like he does consciousness time travel, where you can go back in time and make a change, and there's no grandfather paradox because the change is like ethereal. You're changing someone's motivation. So like, um, if you go back into somebody's mind and kill your grandfather, you cease to be, but it doesn't matter because that decision is now the person who made it. Um, and so now we're talking about undying, predicting futures before being destroyed. Um, yeah, I suppose like if the undying were another, well, not the undying, but if time traveling Bran saw another timeline and had that memory of another timeline and sent it back in time and put it in Daenerys's head, there's no George R. R. Martin paradox because those events like don't really exist anywhere. They're just memories and they affect Daenerys's choices. They don't. Um, there's no paradox. Even though like we all know like no there would be a paradox. Memories are physical things, but in George R. R. Martin world, like memories and souls and consciousness are like ethereal things that don't really inhabit, and therefore it would be fine. But yes, I do think that like there's a previous timeline, and time traveling Bran kind of has these like memories and can project like what they are. I mean, I'm getting pretty close to feeling like I can like tackle the Bran chapter for the fanfic, which would be pretty fun. Um, is hot sauce code for feminism? I'm trying to think like you go to like like if you went to like University of California Berkeley, like would it just be a bunch of like fucking and fighting? Like it's like you don't like if you go super liberal, you don't necessarily get to Dornish culture. Like it's because one thing Dorne doesn't have is like the idea of like safe space culture and stuff like that, and like being sensitive. Like it's not like Oberyn Martell is going around being like, everyone, we have to be very careful because the things we say might have microaggressions. You know, like that's not going to be Oberyn. Oberyn's not worrying about his microaggressions, and like, you know, the trauma, the trauma of the things he may say. I mean, he goes and he tells a dwarf to his face that like he was like a little monster when he was a kid. So at least you know, at least Oberyn is not like that. Uh, um, time travel is a sword without a hilt. Um, by the way, Carmine, when are Trey and I going to be talking about Lomas Longstrider? Isn't that wasn't that something that we're supposed to be talking about soon? I am looking forward to that conversation because it somewhat relates to he Trey's last video was on Herodotus, and you know whether or not like Herodotus like really visited various places and like how much he relied on other people telling him stories. You know, like when you if you make it as far as location X and you hear a story from location Y and you write on location Y, like, you know, how much accuracy are you going to get, you know? And this is the kind of stuff is that Herodotus did, you know? So you should be watching Succession right now. I would have to get into like um I have to watch like seasons 3, 2, 3, and 4. um Dorn is leftist, not liberal. But it's the left. I mean, aren't the leftists the ones that also like worry about um like language and you know the oppression and things like that? Like liberals, um, it's hard to actually like define the exact difference between a liberal and a leftist. You know, I kind of like it's one of those things like pornography. Like you know it when you see it, but like it's hard to define. Um, you know, liberals are kind of like the more practical like leftists. Like they're still working with government. They still think that the system is salvageable. Um, they want like small incremental change, while leftist is like, no, the entire system's like done. Like like we have to overhaul the whole thing. Um, but like you know the specific idea of you know we need to temper our language to kind of uh like on the one hand like a liberal might be sensitive to that, but they'd be like, it's not very practical, like let's also talk about what's practical, while leftist is much more offensive, but at the same time like more feeling that that kind of stuff would need to be done like in a more militant sense. Kind of a contradiction. Um, when we see a new Jon Snow series, do you think they will explore what Jon experienced while dead? Even though you said there was nothing at all. Started over, started our YouTube channel 6 months ago and covered Game of Thrones. Um, well, first off, I don't know if we're going to see a Jon Snow series. Um, it's still not. It's still kind of in development hell. HBO's being weird these days. They're not so accepting of everything. I think George himself is putting his eggs in a. Um, I think George himself is putting his eggs in Dunkin' Egg, and even that's kind of unsure. So, like, I mean, George has said everything's kind of like frozen right now. And I think one of the reasons why, like, the Jon Snow series stuff, like, people leak stuff for reasons, and I think like it was it was leaked because they wanted a bunch of like positive coverage and reaction to show that, like, no, like, people are really into this. This would be a great idea. This is going to be exciting. Like, go forward. So HBO is being weird. Um, but yeah, if a Jon Snow series happened, you one would think one would explore things like what it's like to be dead, and um, I think you would start traveling the world and dealing with egret and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure there'd be like guest stars here and there from like the South and stuff. So I'm trying to think, like, even when they did like Frasier, they would have those occasional episodes where like Sam Malone appeared or Woody appeared for an episode. You know, these kind of things, but not great episodes, not anything different from anything else. But you know, they bring in the viewers, the guest star episodes. Um, what is Barristan's role in the story and his future fate? How will he die? Um, the so Barristan is a funny character in that he was never supposed to exist as a point of view. Like, he was invented by George, um, purely because he was trying to untie the Myronese knot. So the thing that was holding up A Dance with Dragons was the fact that, like, George had a bunch of characters all heading to Slaver's Bay around the same time. Tyrion, Quentin, Victarion. And he knew that, like, Daenerys had to leave on her dragon. Like, this was something that was planned way years ago. You know, well, actually, she flies on the dragon in Daphne's Pit, but doesn't leave yet. But anyway, that was a surprise for me. But anyway, we kind of know that Daenerys needs to go back to Vastoth Rock. That's a vision that she sees at the House of the Undying. She has to leave. So George always knew that Daenerys was going to leave, but the question was, when is she going to leave, and which character is going to arrive first? Is it going to be Quentin? Is it going to be Tyrion? Is it going to be Victarion? And he couldn't figure out how to deal with a lot of the stuff that was happening within Marine with Dany gone. So he was rewriting stuff like, can I get Tyrion there sooner, and then he can take over as a perspective? Can I get Quentin? Can Quentin be the one that taking over the perspective of things and stuff like this? Having people arrive at different times. So in the end, he was like, "Fuck it, I can't figure it out." So he has Daenerys leave, and he creates the Barristan perspective to deal with everything. And so it was a character he never really thought would be there, and he didn't really like have much attachment to. And so when you actually read the Barristan stuff, yeah, a lot is on Marine, but there's also a lot of world building stuff that's just crammed in there that has no place. You know, where George is filling pages and writing words. Um, and so I do believe that he was going to kill Barristan at the Battle of Fire. I do think that that's set up and foreshadowed. I don't know if we'll do that in the fanfic, but I think that George 100% was going to kill Barristan at the Battle of Fire. There's a lot of things that are set up about it. Um, he specifically describes this helm, this dragon helm, that has not very good vision, and he ends up wearing it for the battle. He ends up like establishing a lot of stuff, foreshadowing about like wearing armor and how the pit fighters don't really like him and how they're really behind his dar and stuff like that. Um, and he's established stuff with like the horns and the flags and where the armies are going to go. And of course, like the battle starts out going really well for Barristan, which means usually there's going to be a turn and the battle's not going to go well for him. So I think in George's mind, like at least when he wrote the sample chapters, Barristan was going to die. Now, George changes his mind a lot. So I think, he changed his mind about Victarion. Victarion was supposed to die, and he hasn't. So we'll see. We'll see. Um, I'm late. San Francisco is so much more interesting than New York. Uh, I don't know. I mean, there's just I've spent a good deal of time in both, and the thing about New York is just that you always find a little weird place that you never knew existed on the fifth floor of whatever, hidden behind something. And so, in that sense, I find New York more interesting just because there's just more hidden, crazy stuff. Oh, there's an Uzbek restaurant in Coney Island. What? Like it's Uyghur Uzbek, like, oh, I've got to go to this restaurant called Ninja. It's on the fifth floor, and then you get hidden in this elevator and stuff like that. Um, but I'm colored by the things I like. I like small theater. I like improv. I like weird, crazy restaurants from obscure cultures from around the world. San Francisco, San Francisco, you could argue that it's like, it's nestled in a prettier area, but I don't know if it's that much more interesting. I mean, unless you find homeless people interesting. um, why aren't you a fan of Milton Friedman? I don't think he's of a different time. He's not considering all of the psychology of economics that people talk of now. And so, it's like simple absolute ideas about like money supply and a kind of like logical way of like quantifying economics that eventually led to rational expectations that went a little too far. That doesn't really look into um, uh, human nature. Now, Milton Friedman's stuff is like inseparable from economics right now. So it's not like not being a fan. It's like you're just not looking at the full perspective. You know. Yeah, liberals are leftists. I think that they be far leftist like commies. Yeah, I mean it's these terms, right? These terms these days, like it's all like what's on the left wing, and then like over and over, the term liberal has been tried. They've tried to make liberal into a dirty word. Everybody tries to turn liberal into a dirty word. People remember like back in the days of Dukakis versus HW. Dukakis was this incredibly smart, like good person who would have been a fantastic president, but he was short and he was not that he was not that good looking, and HW decided to label him a liberal, and he's like, he's a liberal. And it was kind of like Meatball Ron. Like it doesn't really mean anything, like, but it's like a name that like colors people inexplicably. And eventually, like, Dukakis is like, yeah, I'm a liberal. I don't, and then he's like, he said it. He said he's a liberal. And this was like seriously HW's campaign. It was the most childish. Wow, no, all the campaigns are pretty childish, but like, you know, bring up flag, like the whole that election was about flag burning and whether or not like um if Kitty Dukakis was raped and murdered, if like the person should receive the death penalty because Michael Dukakis was against the death penalty. Like random discussions like this about like horrible times. I mean, I guess America hasn't changed. But like right now, like I hear more bashing of the term liberal, not even from the right, but from like the far left, trying to invent these terms like neoliberal and stuff like that means anything. We talked about this like last time, like, oh God, like how the term neoliberal is so stupid, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, I understand, like I'm on the left, I am a liberal. I tend to use the term leftist to be like people that think capitalism needs to like fall or something, like the whole system. Theories on Stoneheart and the future of the series. Stoneheart, I think Stoneheart is a stand-in for Ares. I've talked about this a bit, and this is what my Brienne series is about. But for the most part, I think like Lady Stoneheart is a stand-in for Ares, and that she represents blindly following an individual, like honor, and blindly following an individual, um, rather than having your own personal moral code, um, and how that's kind of a morally um, vacuous position that like Brienne needs to discover. Like it seemed all quite honorable, and they kept going with it in the show. Like, you kept your vow, to Lady Sansa. Well, what if Lady Sansa was a piece of shit? Like that's the more interesting question. Like what happens when you make that vow, that noble vow to defend and follow someone, and then they turn out to be a piece of shit, right? And the show never explored that because, I mean, Sansa was kind of a piece of shit at different times, but that's not what the show was supposedly portraying. And so, she's Lady Stoneheart has to die. She has to die. Brienne has to kill her in the same way that Jaime had to kill Aerys. She represents something wrong. You don't like loyalty. Like, I know a lot of people that are like, oh, that think they're really good people because they're loyal to their friends. And it's like, that means nothing. Like, being loyal to the people you like is, what if your friends are pieces of shit? Like, what do you like? Being loyal to your friends is like by itself is nothing. Like, like, so, you have to personally evaluate situations on what the right thing to do is, and Stoneheart is that. Is Brienne having to face the fact that she has to choose her own moral code and her own path. The wall is frost accumulated on a row of evaporator spires, like a freezer plate. Heat pulled from the air, and the wall ends up heat from the air, and wall ends up below Winterfell. I think something like this. I do wonder about. There's all sorts of tunnels underneath the wall as well, which kind of implies. I mean, maybe these tunnels are all from the ancient subterranean civilizations or whatever, but also there might be like maintenance tunnels for something like that. That's some sort of giant refrigeration unit of some sort. And so I think that's I think like would George have make such a mistake to not know that ice sublimates, so I don't know, like, so I think it is something like that it's some sort of like refrigeration unit, and it can take water vapor from the air and like and create create the wall. I mean, he does talk about also like the holes of the wall filling in and stuff like that. So, um, let's see here. Plenty of homeless people in NYC, DC too. There's plenty of homeless people, but there's San Francisco's got better weather, so and pretty good social services. So of course it's going to attract homeless people. It's it's unreal. I mean, I've never seen anything like San Francisco. I mean, people tell me Portland is similar, but it's I mean, in America, go to other around the world, there's homeless people, but um you know, we have to figure out that homelessness is a hard problem, but yeah, no, that but it's a shocking thing to go to San Francisco and look at the homeless people. But to say that like there's plenty, well, I mean that's kind of like an anecdotal thing, like you know, like for a 10K you got to run plenty of miles, you know. For a marathon you got to run more, you know, like it's both are plenty, but what you know, plenty is kind of meaningless. Like there's a lot. It's a shocking number of homeless people in San Francisco. Let's be honest. Let's not let's not you know. This is the other thing about like liberals and leftists. Like liberals are like not naive. Like don't be fucking naive. Like don't be naive and be like, oh, you know, there's homeless people everywhere. No, like San Francisco is it's a real fucking problem. Let's not sugarcoat it. Okay, it's like being like, well, crime is everywhere. Well, I'm from fucking Baltimore. Let me tell you, crime is everywhere, and then there's Baltimore. Okay, like let's not sugarcoat it. Like there's a, like it's San Francisco's like primary problem. Like the thing that is if you were to say like besides like the cost of housing, like what's the problem with San Francisco? You would say homelessness. Well, if you said like what's the problem with New York City, no one would put homelessness as like the major problem of New York City. If you said what's the major problem with Baltimore, people would say crime. Like it's the top of the list thing. So let's not be naive and say that like it's not a problem in San Francisco. It's a fucking problem. Okay, like let's like to say otherwise is just not being realistic. Let's like not be naive here. Um, R plus L equals Fagon. B plus L equals John. Parallels Mance baby swap. Yeah, you know, I talked about this for a long. You know, obviously one of my early videos was not R plus L equals Fagon, but R plus L equals D. You know, these things make sense. I think George had left it open. You know, if he wanted it to go one way or the other. I don't necessarily think it's very important in the end. I think these, I mean, you know, he does do these baby swaps. It is ambiguous, like who could be these baby parents. But at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter because it's all about might makes right and what people believe and true born versus like bastard doesn't matter. You know, like something like 60% of Sweden is born out of wedlock. Like, do I think like there's something wrong with Swedish people that they're somehow like, you know, not fit to hold government office or like commit more crimes? Like, no, they're like all fine. Like marriage and whoever's like trueborn it's a stupid kind of like discussion to have in the first place. And these rules don't matter because it's a world where might makes right. Do you believe that the U.S. government should do more? Do you believe that the U.S. government should do more pro-Israel? They are the most trustworthy Middle Eastern ally. They are good and better than Palestine. I don't believe that. I don't know why, and this is kind of a common thing that you hear from a lot of people that are super pro-Israel is they'll make the statement that no one in the Middle East has like U.S. is back more than Israel. And I'm like, how is that true? Like, how? Like, Turkey's a NATO ally. Jordan is like really, really deeply aligned with the United States. Egypt is deeply, deeply aligned with the United States. Like, Saudi Arabia is deeply, deeply aligned with the United States. United Arab Emirates is deeply, deeply aligned with the United States. All of them have like participated in wars with us. Israel hasn't. I don't understand why people say that like Israel is a trustworthy ally. That it's just not true. Like, they spy on us. They sometimes do things that we don't want them to do. Like, Obama specifically told like Israel to stop building like settlements during a certain period, and they just kept doing it. It's I don't understand. I think like there might be some things where like, oh, if the United States wants somebody to like bomb Iran by proxy or something, like Israel might do it. But I don't understand the oft repeated statement that they're the most trustworthy Middle Eastern ally. It's just not true. It's just not true. Um, I would I would trust Jordan 10 times over um, to be our ally on stuff. They don't spy on us. Like, they would go into any war. Like, Jordan would go into any war we asked them to. They'd be like, yes, sure. Like, I just don't get it. And I think it's because I think it rests on this idea that people don't understand anything about the Middle East, and that like Arabs or Muslims are not trustworthy. Like, some of our most hardened allies are Middle Eastern Muslim countries. They will do anything. Like, Jordan would do anything for us. Anything, anything. I don't understand the idea that Israel is a trustworthy Middle Eastern ally. I don't get it. I mean, we do military exercises constantly with Egypt, and like they're insanely their government's insanely pro-American. I don't understand it. Um, I hear it a lot. You don't hear it from like, U.S. has their different reasons um, for different policies, but um, I don't believe this like trustworthy thing, because it implies the inverse is true, that our other Middle Eastern allies are not trustworthy. And I would have to say, like, what has Egypt or Jordan or even Saudi Arabia, you could say, may have like funded some groups that we weren't necessarily super into, but specifically with like Jordan and Egypt, what have they done to make me not trust them? Like, and you kind of break it down and you go, oh, you're trying to rely on the fact that like I would think that Muslims aren't trustworthy, um, because there's nothing historically that tells me that like Egypt or Jordan would not be trustworthy. Like, they've been like ardent like American allies. So I don't buy it at all. I just don't buy, and I think the question itself is assumes something that is pretty nefarious. Um, um, was Lee Atwater one of the greatest campaign managers of all time? Bush was at a -10 deficit and won in a landslide. Um, I mean, I don't know about polls and things like this. Like, things happen all the time. Um, it's but they did some scammy stuff, but they do that every time. Seems to work. So I don't know. It was how much was luck? How much would have happened anyway? How much was his ideas? I'm not sure. I mean, he may have been. He may have been. But how bad were the polls really? How accurate were the polls? I don't know. But um, But maybe, who knows? I'll leave it up in the air on that one. I mean, it was quite a comeback, and it was like defeating Dukakis over nothing. Dukakis was like overwhelmingly the more the more qualified candidate. But then again, I mean, Al Gore was overwhelmingly the more qualified candidate um, in the election of 2000, like overwhelmingly. And like, how did he lose? I don't know. Um, what will be Walter Frey's fate and the future of House Frey in the series? I think House Frey is probably going to fight itself. I think there's a lot of talk about this. um, I think this. I'm pretty believe in Frey Civil War. I've done videos on this, and I think the Vale invasion is something that's probably going to happen. And that there was a reason why George spent a lot of time in the um, appendices, like talking about who's married to whom, that he doesn't do for other houses. So I think like the Vale invasion is just like kind of written in. I think Walder is, I think Walder's probably gonna like die of old age as a happy guy. I think that's like, I think that I understand that people have like all sorts of ironic endings for Walder. That like, there's a theory that that because when Dunk met Walder Frey, when Walder Frey was a young kid, that that Dunk should have been thrown in a well. That Walder will be thrown in a well. Um, but I think I think a more powerful ending personally is that Walder gets to die a nice, happy death as an old man and never receives any punishment at all, and like is completely happy. And then maybe afterwards, like House Frey falls apart. Um, I mean, some people think, okay, well, would it also be fitting for Walder to watch his whole family die? I guess he's seen a lot of people die already. I think both are pretty powerful endings, I suppose. But I think a civil war is kind of built in there. Merritt Frey's descriptions of things about how there's factions of Freys that are going to fight each other. A lot of people put faith in this like second red wedding kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, other than the fact that there's going to be a wedding, and Lady Stoneheart is looking to kill Freys, like I don't, that's essentially all there is to it. Like that. Oh, I guess there's going to be a second red wedding. Well, there's a lot of weddings. So maybe. Um, how do you respond if it turns out that a fantasy story like In the Lost Lands and Magic Dose end up existing in this world? I think that's like it's certainly possible. George has definitely written stories like that where you like think you understand the rules of things and then something completely weird and magical happens. Um, I'm thinking specifically about Skin Trade, where you kind of think that Skin Trade is a fairly logical story about werewolves, and then all of a sudden there's like, I think there's like summoning shit that happens with mirrors that's completely fantastical, that just kind of like goes in there, that doesn't make any sense at all at the end. So I think he occasionally does use like magic as a shock at the end. So um so I think that kind of stuff happens. But um what if you become the next Three-Eyed George? I don't know about that, but the um I don't have George's abilities of writing, and so I'll never be able to um, be George in that sense. But we do what we can with a team of people. Um, let's see here. we get past the Jordan discussion. The discussion. Jordan is the greatest athlete. LeBron is the greatest basketball player. um, let's see here. Um, didn't Jordan support Saddam Hussein when Iraq invaded Kuwait? This was before the '96 peace agreement, and also before um, Abdullah became king. So you're talking about a different situation. It's like a different country at that point. Um, all but before like all of the aid and military agreements and stuff like that. I mean, a lot has happened since since what, 91. So um so I mean, we'll get back to like, yeah, Middle East. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I also don't understand with like Israel support, like what having Israel as an ally does for us. Like, I don't get it. Like, I understand our support for Israel. Our support for Israel has mainly to do with like the the um the religious voting base in the United States and their interests. So like, and I'm talking specifically about Christian and Jewish populations in America and like their religious feelings about the state of Israel and the idea of Armageddon and stuff like this. Like, we support Israel for very weird reasons in America. But like in a geopolitical sense, like what does Israel actually like give the United States? And I never understood like what we get out, like in a very selfish sense, like what is the United States really getting out of it? What does that particular like ally do for us? Like, Israel never joined us in a war. Like, do we need access, like for instance being allies with Pakistan? Like, we it was very clear we needed to be allies with Pakistan because we need to go overland to get forces into Afghanistan. So like, what we get out of Pakistan is access, right? What are we getting out of our relationship with Israel? Like, it's I don't understand. Like, we don't need access to anywhere. Like, we can reach everywhere in different ways. Like, if we needed to invade anywhere, like Israel doesn't provide us access. So I don't understand what the point of having them as an ally. Like, why do we need that ally in the Middle East? We like, like if you want to go in like a different sense and say, well, we should support like democracies in the Middle East. You're like, okay, if you want to go for like a different route, um, as if the United States is very consistent in their support of democracy. But I never understood like they're an ally and like it's good to have allies. Like, ally for what? Like, what do I need an ally for? Like, what am I getting? Like, what are we allied? What's our project that we're allied in achieving? Like, that's the thing, is what's the project that we're trying to achieve that we need an ally to do? If I'm trying to build a house, I might need an ally to build a house. But what's the project? I mean, I think in some people's mind, like clearly the project is subjugation of like Muslims or something, and when they ask those questions, like these are the bad guys, But I think, um, it's certainly not my beliefs, So, um, I don't see why in your fanfic Sansa should not tell the Blackfish who she is. It's his niece, and he hated Joffrey, even when she thinks she killed him. Well, we have to get to that. I mean, the Blackfish like literally just arrived. Like, like he just arrived. Do you think like, in that moment where everybody's declaring like Sweet Robin king, like would she just jump out and be like, "I'm Sansa!" Like, what? Like, but I think she's going to be, there's a lot of different factors to think about. So, um, so we'll see. But I think there's some dangers to think about with Blackfish and the powers around, and maybe even what Blackfish wants. I mean, maybe Blackfish will tell her like, "Shut up," we've got things to do. So, it's all about you know, analyzing that moment when the time comes. But but we haven't even got to that opportunity. Um, but I think it's neater. It's cooler if she stays as Elaine. So I think we'd probably find a reason. Telltale Stream. Uh Carmine and I, well, we were trying to find a Mac version. I had years ago. I actually owned the Telltale game, and then I deleted it off my computer because it was taking up too much space. But the but yeah, Carmine and I were talking about doing the stream of the Telltale game. Um, but I don't know. It's it's all about getting on my computer. But I don't know. Galitis already also did it, so it's we'll see. Maybe fun. Maybe we can have a laugh at it. But I have to find a version for a Mac, which we weren't able to do. This is why I think it's funny because it's true. Israel must exist for the second coming of Jesus to happen. Like, duh. Yeah, exactly. Um, hand pinked waving. Um, yeah, Carmine is still working on his streaming. He wants to do some game streaming that I'll join. But Preston, have you been to El Salvador? I think you forgot to mention it when you were talking about Latin America. I have been to El Salvador. Um, I El Salvador was pretty nice. I understand that everybody like talks about its crime and everything, and it was definitely an issue that everybody talked about when I was there. But I personally never had any problems when I was there. I I crossed up to what did I do? I started in San Salvador and I crossed up to that like artsy town on the border. What's it like? What's it called? Bocas or something? What's the got a I took a bus up to La Palma. I think that's where the art town is, the artsy town. And then I went to Honduras, and then I think I went down to Santa Ana to some ruins around there, around the lake, and then back to San Salvador. I went to a beach around La Libertad. I can't remember where. And then when I crossed back from Tegus, I passed through, San Miguel and back to San Salvador. Um, they were, I had a fun time there. They were really nice people. And I never had a problem. I never had a problem with anything else, with anybody, with any crime or anything. But people, of course, would talk about this constantly. Like I met some Peace Corps volunteers, and like, oh yeah, no, we get like people with machine guns like take control of the buses, and you have to like hand over your wallets and stuff like that. So, um, I watched them play the Crusader Kings 2 AGA mod. How long? Carmine's played Crusader Kings. Carmine, you gonna jump in because I want to talk about Crusader Kings. Let's see if he comes in. Telltale like Edgar Allan Poe game. I think so. The Telltale games, they give you all these choices, but to get different cutscenes. But I think in the end, the same events happen. So it's like not even like it's supposed to be all these like different choices to have different stuff happen in the game, but you kind of end up in the same place. So like people's criticism of the Telltale games are like like your choices don't really matter. It's sort of like say you're having a scene with your mom, and it's like, oh, you could be really nice to your mom at breakfast, and then she's going to go to the grocery store, or you can have a fight with your mom, and she then goes to the grocery store, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter. She still just went to the grocery store. Like that's the same. um, Opinion on the historicity of Jesus. So there's little evidence of the historicity of Jesus, like historical accounts that they've been edited later. The one thing that makes people think that there really was a Jesus is the fact that the creation myth with Jesus contradicts itself, and that if it were an invented story, you wouldn't need to have that creation myth. And this gets down to the nativity story. So like you've got Jesus of Nazareth, and he's clearly from Nazareth, Jesus of Nazareth. But like in the Old Testament, there's implication that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. So how do you have Jesus of Nazareth born in Bethlehem? Well, you get this really fucking ridiculous story about how there was a census, and everyone had to, and King Herod, even though King Herod didn't live at that time and because he was already dead or whatever, like he for some reason wanted to kill this baby that, like, first of all, like, you'd never send people back to their home city for a census, because the whole point of a census is to determine how many people are in your city so you can determine like the needs for that city. So like sending everybody home for a census is pointless and dumb. So that was really stupid. But then also this idea that this like client state would have a king that was scared of another person rising up to be king and misunderstanding that prophecy and wanting to like snuff him out, like silly stuff, like makes no sense. The entire story of like Jesus's birth like in Bethlehem is the dumbest thing you could come up with. And so the idea is that if Jesus were invented, would the story be that dumb? Like, why wouldn't you just create a guy from Bethlehem rather than having him be Jesus of Nazareth? And that's a good explanation, and I would say that's like one of the better explanations for the historicity of Jesus. That like the ridiculousness of the tales shows that they were trying to force a real person into the prophecy. But then again, you also have situations like the 12 Labors of Hercules, where you clearly have like a whole bunch of different stories. Hey, that you clearly have a bunch of different stories that they merge. So I don't know what's going on.
So
Put
for some of the people who am I coming through right, or are there audio issues? Hold on.
I mean, I have my headphones on. I have my headphones on. There's no audio issues. You can't even have an echo because of the headphones on. Okay, so I didn't even bother with the canceling. So Crusader Kings, is that entertaining enough to play on a live stream?
Yes and no. It can be very boring because it is a slog. So I sent you on Facebook just now. So download those 3 pictures and upload them. Do not share your screen, for the love of God. Download those 3 pictures, and I just want to show the audience some of the fantastical events that happened in some of my playthroughs. These are all different playthroughs. Actually, let me see something here. So, depending on who you... Okay.
You're talking about running into Chad Summerchild in the Crusader Kings?
No, actually, I haven't... So, the people who made the Game of Thrones mod, they contacted me to contact you. because
Yeah.
I'm your agent or something. And they're like, "Hey, is Preston cool with having Preston with Chad Summerchild in the game?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure he's all right with it." And I asked you, and you're like, "Yeah,
No, that's really fun. It's pretty nice.
yeah."
It's pretty
Okay.
fun.
They're like, "Okay, great."
Cool. The so what we have here, you sent me this picture of this of Lord Samuel the Third
So
of the
this
West
is
match.
so let me explain. So at the very top is my character. That is Roose Bolton. So I was
Okay.
playing as Roose Bolton, and as we can see here, Samwell Tarly, the Samwell we know from the books,
Mm.
is somehow married to Cersei.
Nice. That's so fun.
Somehow Samwell Tarly managed to land Cersei. Go to the next. By the way, and yes, for those of you wondering, I often play Roose Bolton around not Clash of Kings, around Feast for Crows, because that's really I like the North area around that time. It's really fun, and of course, because of my traits, I always end up joining the Satanic Cult, which is in the game Cult of the Others. But
Okay.
so here, this one is just random. So here I was playing as the Lady of House Norcross,
Uh huh.
and I randomly decided to check in on Jon Snow. He's just gay. He's just gay. For some reason, the game made him homosexual. I don't know why.
How do you
The
know he's
game just
gay?
made him gay. It tells you right there. Like there's his traits.
Um.
So you can see there the twin swords. He's a skilled fighter, and I think the golden heart is he's generous, and right between those two is he's a homosexual, but somehow still end up
Huh.
marrying someone and having children.
Okay. Okay. So there's this. Well, I mean, you can still marry people and have children, but and they just
Of course.
so is the AI just like produces these kinds of like random things, right? And then just kind of goes along with them, yeah.
The AI is just completely random. Did you go to the last one?
Yeah. I'm bringing it up now.
I sent you three.
This one here, my
So
lord.
this one here is
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My lord, news from King's Landing of a trial by combat. Cersei Lannister demanded a trial by combat of her captor, King Robert Baratheon, selecting Lord Paramount Tywin Lannister as her champion. What? Lord Paramount Tywin was slayed by his opponent, Donald Noy. What? Proving Cersei's guilt. As a consequence, Cersei was forced to take a vow of silent sister. That's fucking awesome. What?
So the way the game works is that you can like the game sets you up exactly as where like certain events are. So for
Yeah.
example, one of my favorite timelines to play is the Crowned Stag, literally months after Robert was crowned king. Everything is the same as it is in the books the moment you start. The very next day after you start the game, that's
Yeah.
when the AI just does like random shit, and Cersei ends up becoming a Silent Sister. In one of my playthroughs, Jorah
Mm.
Mormont somehow kidnapped Daenerys and joined a satanic cult. And in another playthrough, Robert Baratheon became celibate. It's just so fucking random.
Huh. I mean, I do have to just say that it's just like it's just so much fun, the little mechanisms, because they're adding randomness to the story, and then just various stuff happens. Like, oh, the Jon Snow might be gay and married with children, and it's very funny that they put on their sexual preference in there.
Yes.
Like,
Sometimes the game will unfortunately bug out, and everyone will like. In one of my playthroughs, I added a mod to do some certain things, and it just turned everyone gay. I don't. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course. I'm just saying
yeah.
everyone was gay. It's
I'm
just
trying to think of a world where where Cersei Lannister would choose Tywin as her champion.
I in one of my playthroughs,
Cersei, because Cersei would, because Tywin's going to be what, like in his early 50s, and
yes, it's Tywin as you know him from the books. Yes.
yeah, so he's going to be in his early 50s. But but Jaime still exists. She should be choosing Jaime, the best sword in the kingdom, unless he's like captured or dead or something. I don't know what happened
in one of my playthroughs. That did happen. In another of my playthroughs, Rob, I played as Rob. I was actually able to cut off Tywin at Harrenhal and engage him in a one-on-one duel on the battlefield and kill him and essentially root his army.
So how many hours does it take to get to something fun like that?
Oh, it fucking takes like forever.
So like you and me,
to be fair,
I'm just saying like so say you get your live stream going, okay? Like and we sit around shooting the shit for like 2 hours while you play. Is it gonna get to like something fun and cool, or are you still like building at that point?
It depends on who you play as. So if you play as Roose Bolton, like you can get some fun stuff going down. If you play as Robb Stark or Ned Stark, you can get some fun stuff going down. The thing about Cersei, if you look on that picture, I was playing as the young lord of House Morgan from the Stormlands, and even though like small house in the Stormlands, I have to build my shit up. You still get messages that are like major events all over like the world, one of which being Cersei and the thing. So you still will get those events randomly every now and then, but you also have to go out and look for it. Like me finding out that Jon is gay, I randomly was playing. I'm like, you know what? What's Jon Snow up to in the game? Is he dead? So I looked him up, and no, he's just gay. So.
Yeah. Telltale game is not that bad compared to later seasons of the show. It's brilliant. I hated it the first time I played, and didn't mind it last week. You know, I've seen a lot of the cutscenes. They're fine. They're fine. You know, it's you know, at first they seem a little over the top, but then you realize that like Game of Thrones can be over the top too, and the animation, I guess on today's standard, isn't very good, but it was made a long time ago. But did you see the George R. R. Martin on the ancestry thing? Hay thought his grandfather was Italian, I think, but after taking DNA ancestry, they found out he was Jewish. I think his grandma cheated. So you have to remember that. I mean, this is all possibility of ancestry and stuff like that. But you got to remember that how like 23andMe and all these ancestry tests work. So these ancestry tests work by having a bunch of people who all believe they're, I'm going to say, let's say Transylvanian. Okay. Say like your family has a family history of believing you're Transylvanian, and you and your relatives all have this Transylvanian story. And when you fill out 23andMe, it asks you like, what are your background? What do you think your background is? And you put down Transylvanian. Okay. And you send it in. If enough people with this one genetic marker all claim they're Transylvanian, then they'll start declaring this genetic marker as Transylvanian. However, you got to remember that people's family myths like are huge. And if those family myths like happened a long time ago, and enough people all believe that myth, like that gene can be marked wrong, and you can get, you know, it's all circular reasoning on how stuff like, I mean, but then again, I mean, what is ethnicity? Ethnicity is just a lie we all kind of believe. Now, so with like George being Jewish, it's like, well, he has a gene that a bunch of other people have who filled out the form and said they were Jewish. And people of certain backgrounds do the test more than other people. So you're going to get statements from certain ethnic groups that are more into the genetic testing than other ethnic groups that are not. So you get a lot of weird stuff like that. So I mean, you know, to say like, oh, I've got Jewish ancestry, like what does that really mean? Like, because we're all descended from the same people. You go back 500 years, only 500 years. You're related to everybody on the planet. So like, you know, you gotta you have to step back and be like, well, what's the real science behind this? And can one really be like, what does it mean to be French? What does it mean to be German? Like when I talk about like my background, like first of all, me walking around Germany, no German could physically tell the difference between me and another German. Okay. I don't necessarily have any German ancestors. However, I've got lots of Dutch ancestors, and I do have some ancestors from Strasbourg. Is Strasbourg German, or is Strasbourg French, or is Strasbourg Strasbourg? Does that count? And so there are all these sorts of questions when you get into these like, backgrounds and stuff. Like, what does it mean to be Italian? What does it mean to be Jewish? Like, once you start really asking those questions, like, how do they know? You get some kind of, and it's not like these groups didn't have converts, like, and people that are there a bunch of generations and just assume, like, I just assumed I was Jewish because I was in this community long enough, or I just assumed I was Italian because I was in this community long enough. So it's you get all this like weird stuff. I would take all of them, like any one of these tests with a grain of salt. There's so much uncertainty and so many kind of like weird ideas that people have with their family histories and creating their family narratives. It's like reading Fire and Blood. Like, what's really going on in your background? You're never going to know. You're never going to know. Not to mention the fact is when people talk about their family background and their family narrative, they rarely talk about the women. So if you had like a whole bunch of people like, marrying women of different backgrounds, and then the women's backgrounds never talked about. So you're like, oh, I can't believe I've got Jewish blood in me. Well, because no one ever talks about the women. Like, it doesn't, like, sometimes you wouldn't even get the last names of women, like, on your records. Like, if any of you examine your family trees and start going back, you'll notice that the female surnames disappear before the male ones do, and then the male surnames disappear. It's a very shady pseudoscience, but let me see here. My take on the Telltale game was everybody was going to die. It's about how you remembered it that matters. I mean, I guess that's life in general. So what else is going on with you, Carmine?
No, stuff and stuff.
What?
Always stuff and
like
stuff.
Like what? What?
By the way, I heard what you said earlier about getting Trey on to do the Lomas Longstrider one. I don't know if you saw my reply to you, but no.
You said he's busy. He's riding horses.
Posting thirst trap pictures on Twitter. That's what he's doing.
This is like we should have like a pie chart of Trey's life, which is 25% Twitter, 25% horseback riding. And then
honestly, like I kind of get it from his perspective, because me, I'm not active on Twitter or social media. I know you're not. You can give a fuck.
No.
But like there has to be, on some level, it's kind of like intoxicating for a young guy like that to have such a huge following at such a young age. And like he could probably like put out a tweet and get tens of thousands of people to see it. He probably has the power to like move shit around, maybe, or start like a hashtag, which at first you think about it, who cares? That's kind of crazy and cool at the same time if you think about it.
That's true. That's true.
Like for example, imagine having like tens of thousands of followers and like you hated one aspect of The Mandalorian because it was boring, and you tweet about it, and then like in the next season they kind of fix it because they saw your tweet, like, or maybe, hey George, where's Winds of Winter? Maybe he'll fucking see it because you have so many followers pushing it out there in the algorithm.
Yeah, no, that's all very true, and. Also, when something becomes your board go-to, like a lot of people have like a phone game, whether it be Candy Crush, and it's your board go-to. You're like, I'm bored. I'm on a train. I got to wait 5 minutes until my doctor's appointment starts. What's your board go-to? Is it Pokemon Go? Is it and if Twitter is your board go-to, you're going to be on it. But then there's this idea of like I'm cultivating a following, and I feel like I need to keep posting, or my fans are gonna wonder what's going on. I mean, we certainly have that with this channel, right? Like with our channels, like when you don't post in a while, you're like, oh gosh, my fans must be wondering like where I've been, and stuff like that. So it's yeah. No, he's got
Ironically, he just messaged me right now. He's messaging me as we speak, and he goes,
is he watching?
On my script tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
He must be watching. He can post
roasting me.
Oh, I'm not roasting him bad. I just was looking forward to the Lomas Longstrider thing because I went and I read up about it, and I really liked his Herodotus video. That's all. We get one more short novella in the Maester style of Sons of the Dragon, the Rogue Prince, Princess and the Queen. Which Targaryen prince should it cover, or Blackfires? So, honest to God, I think at this point, if George is going to be putting out another written product, the most likely product that he is going to put out is Fire and Blood Volume 2. And I think that has mostly to do with like House of the Dragon being the show right now, right? And as the show goes, say it goes they're going so fast. Say we get to end of season 3, and they're like, okay, like, where do we go with the show? We want to do another season. HBO is like, seasons 4, 5, 6. All of a sudden, you need that. You've come to the end of Fire and Blood, and it's like, yeah, you can do the anthology idea that Carmine likes because he loves anthologies, but like I don't think the rest of the world likes anthologies as much as Carmine does. I think like all of a sudden switching to Aegon's Conquest or Maego the Cruel or something is not the way to go. Like they would want to just keep going with these characters forward in time. And so I think that like if we were gonna get another Maester style thing, it would be Fire and Blood Part 2. I think that's the most likely next product of George. And because I also know he can shit out Fire and Blood pretty fast. Like he can shit that stuff out. He just needs to like focus on the beginning and then just kind of shit later. And then if he wants, he can like Blackfire Rebellion stuff can be in there, which would relate to Dunk and Egg kind of stuff. So like it's I just think that's just the way. So I think that would he just start with a short novella kind of thing and then see how much more he can finish? I think he would, but I think he would focus on Aegon III and Viserys II as his next story. And then I think that's what he would do. Now, what I'd like to see? No, I'd love to see Dunk and Egg stories. I'd love to see Blackfire Rebellion stuff. Like I would love to see that personally. But I think George would focus on Aegon III and Viserys II. What even is Switzerland? Exactly. These ideas of like ethnicity and culture and stuff like this, like these kind of invented ideas. I there's this so I used to be really obsessed with the Uyghurs. I still am kind of obsessed with the Uyghurs. I love them. But the Uyghurs are an interesting. So the Uyghurs are these people in northwest China mainly, who don't get that much attention because they're not as cute as Tibetans. But East Turkestan was invaded at the same time as Tibet was in 1950, and the Uyghurs are treated very poorly by the Chinese government. But the interesting thing about Uyghur identity, and there is like this growing sense of being Uyghur. But what's funny is that you can check out a book by a professor named Justin Ruddleson, and he wrote a book called Oasis Identities, and he was the definitive expert on Uyghur identity. And then he couldn't really do very much work in China because he was banned, and his career actually took some hits, which is too bad because he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And but Justin Ruddleson wrote his thesis on Uyghur identity, and what was funny is that prior to the Soviet Union kind of classifying what a Uyghur was, like, they didn't really think of themselves as Uyghurs. Like, they thought of themselves as like their town, their oasis, And so like, but once they became kind of uniformly oppressed by the Soviets, they were like, well, we're all Uyghurs. So you kind of like invent Uyghurness. And then once Uyghur was invented as a concept in Soviet culture, like, it transitioned over, and the people in China started considering themselves Uyghurs on the other side of the border. And you can kind of see the same thing with like Black American culture. Like, there's no uniform African culture. Like Africa is all over the map when it comes to like the differences from place to place. Like, there's no African culture. Like, it's so diverse. However, once you take all of these diverse people and plop them in America and start uniformly oppressing them and classifying them in a certain way, you invent a new nationality and ethnicity, or whatever you want to call it. So the Black American ethnicity is kind of born out of like the similar shared experience. So like, you can just like invent kind of stuff. But then to like, in a 1,000 years, like, people will start talking about, I've got, Black American heritage or something, like American heritage generally. You could start talking about that eventually. Fanfic project idea: the Rogue Prince of the Seven Kingdoms. It's your perspective on Daemon, as told with his as a protagonist, like with Dunk. Huh. Yeah, that's a lot of time. Throw it on the pile of projects. That's it's a really good idea, but it's a really good idea. I want the reign of Baelor the Blessed. That would be an interesting reign, especially just hearing about like his attitudes towards his sisters and the Maiden Vault and stuff like that.
Wait, before you go down, that guy roasted the shit out of you a little bit. That's fucking hilarious. Right above Kyle, father.
Kyle, father to bears. When you move,
That's
how long will it take to figure out how to change your thumbnail?
He's implying that you're tech illiterate.
Oh, like my Twitter thumbnail being just like Sweet Robin or something, or what, or whatever.
Never mind. Never mind.
Like, which thumbnail? Are you talking about my video thumbnails? I get it that like I'm tech illiterate, but
By the way, did Ecamm do like an update? It kind of looks different.
Does it?
Did it do an update like a while
They do
ago?
They do updates like every week, but like, yeah, there was a move where the various buttons like move around, but I don't know if you can see those. So it looks different to me, but I don't know why it would look different to you.
Not on my end, no.
Or like, but yes, the like the user interface on my end, it looks very different. Like where I don't know, where to start your recording and stuff like that is on different areas, how it's done. Why? Because you're still playing around with it? Or are you talking about viewing me right now?
No, yeah, for a minute, like when you were first started streaming, it looked different. You had like the audio thing above you and all that.
Yeah.
What happened to Will's audio, by the way? Because I've spoken to Will before, and his audio was fine with me.
It was just coming in mono. It wasn't so bad. It just was coming in one side. So, somehow his mic switched to mono. I imagine it was probably just some hidden button or something that needed to put it back to stereo. That was it. Ba-da-da-da. Thousand Fingers of Her Lord, Davos's fingers bones, Jaime losing his hand. What sort of themes is George R. R. Martin trying to convey with hands and fingers? So some people would argue that specifically with Jaime that there's something biblical in the sense that like if your hand offends thee, cut it off kind of idea. And therefore like his hand that's the hand he touches Cersei with, and therefore like it's the hand that like needs to be, it's the hand that tosses Bran from the tower, therefore it's the hand of sin, and therefore it gets cut off. And I guess kind of relates to like of Mice and Men. I don't even remember with like Lenny and George. Didn't George wear a glove that he filled with Vaseline or something? I might be confusing it with some other story, but like there was about the and they were like, oh, he has the hand with Vaseline because that's the hand he touches his wife with. Some weird things like this, as if you like only touch your wife with one hand, as if Jaime only touched Cersei with one hand. It's kind of these silly ideas, but I think there's some sort of like relation there, but I think George is probably just getting into kind of a very basic sense. Like there's something very visceral to losing a body part. And like, you know, people can talk about things itching and stuff like that, things missing pieces of oneself. But yeah, he certainly does it a lot, right? Like with people missing, Tyrion missing a nose and Ilan Payne missing a tongue and Davos missing fingers and, Jaime missing a hand and Theon missing a penis, and like it just goes on and on, right? He seems to love it, but maybe it has something to do with the sinning, like, you know, or the body, or the body part also represents like everything that they think they are, you know, like Theon had so much of like wrapped up in the idea that he was a man and that he was like banging women right and left, and Jaime had so much wrapped up in the fact that he was a great swordsman. Tyrion losing his nose doesn't really do anything. It would actually make more sense if he lost his tongue, but that like takes away the story. You can't have him lose his tongue because then he'd have no dialogue. But yeah, losing the thing that you think is like defining you, and what it does to you. I think he likes to explore that a lot. Though Davos losing his finger bones losing his fingers doesn't really do anything. You know, him losing Stannis is a much larger kind of thing. Oh yeah, the half hand hand cut off. Arya's hair gets cut. Yeah, the Arya's hair and Daenerys' hair and Cersei's hair. I think that a lot has to do with like femininity and like them trying to take away their like everything that relates to them being women and having to try to make it as men. You know, and gender bending kind of aspects of things, like what it forces them to do. I guess it is just a mechanism that moves everyone into their comfort zone, right? Or out of their comfort zone, to try like new avenues of power. Like they're relying on a certain path of agency, and then we're gonna switch things up by removing that path of agency and move them on to something else. Tywin lost his hair. True, Tyrion never was pretty. And what's funny is he was never pretty, and yet he still seems to be like doing the same. Like it's not like when people look at Tyrion, they're like, "You have no nose." Like Penny is still hitting on him, and he still believes his like. He still believe. It makes me think that like Penny is faking it, and she has like some ulterior motive. But I think when you read it, you're just like, no, Penny is just a really sweet girl and really wants to get with Tyrion, even though he's like a noseless dwarf jerk who killed her brother. I mean, didn't really kill her brother, but she supposedly believes that he killed her brother, you know. Now I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. Carmine, talk, be entertaining. Say what you want while I'm gone.
Oh, fuck, you put me on the spot. Oh, I really don't know what to... I don't have anything prepared. I was just doing some laundry. I always do laundry on Sunday, so... fuck. I will start streaming soon, by the way. And, when? I don't know. I don't know when. It will be soon. Maybe. And I promise you that we will perhaps maybe do like a video game stream or something, Telltale. Definitely not Crusader Kings, a Game of Thrones, because that will take hours upon hours and will just bore people. So, not sure giving Carmine the reins is a great idea. Fuck you, Daniel. Someone ban this man. Get out of here. Who wrote the pink letter? I wrote the pink letter. By the way, when I stream, I hope you guys aren't like gonna ask me these questions because I will be a fuckhead. What's your star sign? Fuck off. That's my star sign. Spicy Carmine politics. You know, Trump wasn't that bad. Trump, he had some great... Oh, shit. You heard that. Yeah. Hold on. You didn't hear anything? Shh.
Carmine said nothing. He said nothing while I was gone. Damn it. You're supposed to be entertaining. True. You're supposed to be entertaining, dude. You're supposed to, like, dance like a monkey. Be entertaining.
I am very entertaining. I'm the Dragon Demands of entertainment. What do you mean? What are you saying?
Hey, DD isn't here today. I didn't see him on today either.
Who?
Dragon Demands. He often.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's busy.
So
he'll pop up eventually.
So Carmine, what are your opinions on Daemon Targaryen? Do you think that he did anything wrong at any point in his life, or do you think he's a completely innocent character?
I don't know.
You've forgotten Fire and Blood, haven't you? You've forgotten.
No, it's like realistically, like the only really awful thing was him goading what was it, the Sea Lord's son into a duel, and then the blood and cheese thing. He had something to do with that. It's been a minute. Then he had something to do with blood and cheese, getting those guys.
Well, we have no idea who hired Blood and Cheese. I mean, it might be. Some people think it's Massaria. Like, there's an implication that it's Massaria.
That Daemon had something to do with that.
Let me check the exact quote. Earlier, I was really embarrassed. I said that Essos didn't appear in Fire and Blood, and it did. Essos never appears. Yeah. So embarrassing. So embarrassing. Okay. Let's see. Let's find Blood and Cheese here. I'll just do my search for cheese. It says here their true names are lost to history. They're remembered as Blood and Cheese. One was a sergeant in the city watch, big and brutal. He had lost his gold cloak for beating a whore to death whilst in a drunken rage. So Gildane claims, he says, amidst the stews of Fleet Bottom, Prince Daemon's go-between found suitable instruments. So essentially, like, Gildane just accuses Daemon of doing it. Yeah.
I mean, who else would know, like, these awful, awful people in the underworld of King's Landing?
I mean, everybody? Laurie Strong. Laurie Strong, really. But in his youth, Daemon Targaryen's face and laugh were familiar to every cut purse, whore, and gambler in Fleet Bottom. The prince still had friends in the low places of King's Landing and followers amongst the gold cloaks. Beknownst to King Aegon, the Hand, or the Queen Dowager, he and his allies at court as well. Even the Green Council and one other go-between, a special friend he trusted utterly, who knew the wine sinks and rat pits and that festered in the shadows of the Red Keep, as well as Daemon himself once had, and moved easily through the shadows. To this pale stranger he reached out now, by secret ways, to set up terrible vengeance in motion. So
The problem with the question is Daemon Targaryen a good guy really depends on like the Ice and Fire level of how much of a piece of shit you are, because kind of almost every single character is a piece of shit. Like even Robert Baratheon, who I really enjoy, like he beat Cersei on several occasions.
sure,
So
I mean,
it's not really a great person.
he ordered a
You could
child to
argue
be murdered.
Robb is
Yes.
cool. Right. You could argue
yeah.
Robb is cool. Ned is kind of cool, you know. But what are we talking about? Are we talking about like someone who's like kind of cool, like Robb, versus someone who's like downright evil, like Ramsay? Like I'm sure Daemon is somewhere in between with like 90% of the other characters.
Yeah. So it's also just like how much we're gonna believe of Gildain. So it's hard to say like how would Gildain know this information about that Daemon hired this pale go-between to hire Blood and Cheese. I don't know.
Well, because Blood is a he was a sergeant in the City Watch, and you know Daemon was a part of the City Watch for a long time, so you can make the connection very easily.
I mean,
right?
A lot of people are in the City Watch. Like I mean, it's also been like 20 years since he was in the City Watch, but was that a prosthetic on Ziggy in that one episode? Yeah, it was. He's talking about The Wire here. There's a scene where my friend whips out his penis, and I was like, yes. I've actually talked to him about that. He says it was like a massive dildo, where he's just like, this is ridiculous. Like this looks stupid. Yeah. Crusader King's Cat 1, Edmure sends his army home. What the fuck? Did that happen? Did it ever happen to you? Edmure sending his army home? Yeah.
So I will say this in regards to Crusader King, no one playthrough is ever the same. I'm sure there are people who have played the game where Jon ended up being gay or Cersei ended up being a silent sister, but for the most part, your playthroughs, they will always be like very fucking random. You know? At one of my playthroughs, something happened to Robert where he engaged in the battle to protect King's Landing, and he lost, and he was imprisoned, but he was released from prison, and then he was just a eunuch. They castrated him after he lost. So like everyone's playthrough will be different on some level. No one playthrough will be 110% the same.
Oh! This is Clash of Kings, not Crusader Kings. Let me read that again. A Clash of Kings, Cat 1, Edmure sends his army home. What the fuck? I think, am I forgetting? Wasn't he very concerned about the small folk and wanted to protect his small folk? At some point, the military battles at this point in the story like get very confusing. But let me think here. Catelyn 1, A Clash of Kings. But I know that like Edmure. Oh right. Catelyn snaps that it was Edmure's idea to permit the river lords to depart for their own lands. Edmure argues that he cannot command his lords to remain idle while their crops are burned and their people killed. Yeah. So I think this is the idea that so he essentially he's falling into Tywin's trap. So like Tywin's idea was that if he sent out the Mountain's Men and the Brave Companions and and Amory Lorch to harass and brutalize the small folk, that Robb's army would shrink because the lords would have to go home and like defend their own lands. And so this is like, you know, Edmure essentially falls for it. He has to do it. So it's a pretty brutal move from Tywin, where he's just killing random people, but as a distraction. And Edmure like cares about the small folk, which is a fairly important plot point of Edmure. Which is funny that they made Edmure into such a laughing stock in the show, right? Like that like I don't know. What do you think of Carmine? What do you think of the show's portrayal of Hoster Tully's funeral?
It was they had to put Edmure down to, I guess, elevate the Blackfish to being a character that's like no nonsense and just a straight on general.
Right. Because
like
show Blackfish is not anything like book Blackfish. Like show Blackfish is a frickin' dickhead. But like this scene where he like wrestles the bow from it, he's like, "Give me that," and then this like you freaking asshole, you can't manage to shoot an arrow down a river at your own father's funeral. Like what a pathetic piece of crap you are. Like, give me that. And that was just not how it plays out in the book at all. But
well, it becomes even more unnecessary in season 8 when like they're trying to pick the king and then he volunteers and then Sansa just tells him, just sit the fuck down. Like, it's not gonna be you. Why? Why not? He's a nice guy.
Yeah,
if a bit misguided. He's cool.
But are the River Lords burning their own fields? That was like right, because some of them were like burning their crops so that they couldn't be stolen by somebody. It was like there's a lot of chaos in the Riverlands. This is why it's like very difficult to determine what's going on. In fact, I would say that back when I first became obsessed with this book series and like I finished and I was like, what the hell was going on with Arya and the Riverlands and everything? Like, it just seems so confusing to me. So I went back and I like reread that part to like reread all the Riverlands stuff, which eventually is where like the whole like Oberyn Martell's like sellsword company as the Brave Companions kind of thing came from, and my obsession with the Brave Companions. But like, it's yeah, I think there's mixed stuff on like who's burning what, but certainly like the three forces that Tywin is sending around are burning things. But I think some other people are also burning their own crops so that they won't be abused, or that somebody will think that they already were hit. But I know that like Edmure sends people home because of the abuse that Tywin is going on, is putting on them. This is your own video, Preston. Is this Riverlands of the Dragon? I mean, I made that a long time ago. And plus, was I specifically talking about like Derry, Wendish Town, and like that thing? I mean, that's different. Like, that's about like whether or not like the Derrys are like trying to start the war, because they're secret Targaryen supporters. But but you can't just say like all of the Riverlanders at once, because it's like, which house? Are any dogs named in A Song of Ice and Fire? They're definitely around. I mean, the Hound, the Mountain. Do any dogs have names? That's a really good question. I don't. Let's see here. Oh, you know what dogs are named? I'm sorry, Ramsay's dogs are named. That's right. That's coming to my head. Ramsay's dogs are all named after the women that he kills, so yeah, those dogs are are named. I'm trying to think of anybody else besides Ramsay's hounds. But at least them. I can't think of anybody else besides the Ramsay's dogs. Yeah. Did Egg name a dog? I'm trying to remember. There's something to do with Chestnut, a dog, but we know the cats. We know the cats get some good names. Oh, I think there's a dog called the Red Widow. No. Or is he? No, no. I think they're just talking about Rohan Weber. Like the Red Widow? No. Oh, no. Oh, there's a dog named Useless. Or no, or is that Eustace? Damn it. I'm looking at this quote here. The Red Widow, though, we tell Useless that bitch dog took his water. Oh, I think they're just talking about. They're not talking about a human being. They're not talking about a real dog there. Yeah, I just think Ramsay's dogs might be the only ones. Let's see here. What would be the Valyrian word for king that would have a dog's name? Like Rover? Yeah, did Vermeer Sixskins have a bunch of dogs, right? Oh yeah, Penny has Crunch. That's a good one. Yeah, Penny has Crunch. Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty. But if we're talking, I don't know. But we're talking about like Mummer's Ford briefly. Like, okay, so I have this series way back in the day where called Riverlands of the Dragon, which tries to get into the fact that like the like Raymond Derry like comes to King's Landing and like claims that his lands were like burned and that the mountain is to blame. And it's not that later the Mountain's Men and Amory Lords and the Raven Companions aren't doing that to the Riverlands, but like at that time it's rather suspicious and it seems like the small folk are lying. And so is this idea that perhaps like Derry burned his own lands in order to try to instigate a war because he was actually like a Targaryen supporter, because that chapter is just a bunch of like weird stuff. But Carmine, have you watched Mandalorian this week yet?
It was so fucking boring. Holy shit. No. This is not... Did you like the episode?
I have not seen it yet.
Dude, I was about to go into so much spoilers. You should have said something.
No, it's fine. You can.
No, it was... This is not great. Like, I'll be very honest. Seasons 1 and 2, like the first... God, I think we're at the halfway point. I think they're 8 episodes of Mandalorian Season 3. Mandalorian Season 3 episodes. Dude, it's so bad right now. There are going to be 8 episodes. We're at the halfway point, and it is so fucking boring. The halfway points to Seasons 1 and 2 were great. By the halfway point in Season 1, we're heavily invested. Things were, ramping up. Everything was great. Season 2 as well. Some good stuff. And then here, it's not even about Mando. Like he's completed all his tasks, and he's just waiting to stumble across the next quest giver. It's really Bo-Katan's story.
I see. I see. But that's what you wanted. You said last week that you wanted it to be Bo-Katan's story, and you got exactly
Yes, I
what you
want her
wanted.
to. No, not this crap. You'll have to see it. Like, not like it's a stupid rescue mission for character nobody cares about. And then they. Whoops! I'm sure you've seen this. They showed off the Jar Jar Binks actor being a Jedi Master and kicking ass, which cool, but yeah, they're kind of slowly going
The,
into
the, the,
Grogu's
the
story.
guy
How
that
he,
the guy that almost killed himself because of like the abuse people gave him. That one.
yeah, that was bullshit. Like, come on, really?
Yeah.
It's if anything, give George the abuse, not that guy. George Lucas is an asshole who even wrote that. By the way, have you ever? Okay, I this is completely random. So I was watching episode one just randomly. It was on, and
Uh-huh.
do
Because it's
you
your favorite
remember
movie.
the scene?
It's your favorite movie.
I
Yes.
hate that. I hate that movie so much. Do
Okay.
you remember the scene where uh, Padme is on Coruscant? It's after they
Hmm.
leave Tatooine and they have the kid, and Padme is pondering the death and destruction of her planet and her people suffering. And then
Yes.
Jar Jar is also in the scene,
Hmm.
and and, I don't know why this line kills me every time.
You mean
He
people are
goes,
gonna die? That one.
yes, it's the most ridiculous line. It's a serious situation
You
with the
mean
most
people are
unserious
gonna
character.
die? Yeah.
He goes, Yusa thinks so Yusa people gonna die? Yo, my man, please. For the love of God, this is not the time. This is not the time for you. No, go away. You Gungans. Well, we'll fight back. Yeah, that's great. Fuck off. I don't need you right now.
I don't know. Like, I mean, this gets back to like Red Letter Media's thing. Like, how is it that that planet is unable to, like, with a blockade, like, unable to support itself for a week? Like, what? Like, how are you not self sufficient enough that you can't go a week without like space trade? Did you know that the Valyrian word for king is Daris? It's like Dario, but Daris.
Are you asking me that? I
Yeah,
have
did
no
you know
idea. I'm
that?
speaking
Yeah,
Korean.
yeah,
I did
yeah.
not know that.
I don't know.
I speak Dothraki.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but it is true. Like, we're getting all this like Peter Pascal, and he's barely talking, and we can't see his face. Like, what's the point? What's the point of? I mean, right? Like, we've hired like a Victoria's Secret supermodel and put her in a burqa. Like, why bother? I mean, like,
Because he's not in the suit. I know everyone loves to jerk this off and say, like, that's Pedro in this. No, he's not in the suit. I know in an interview he said he hates wearing the suit. He's just saying that because
he's
he's
just doing
paid
the
to say that.
he's just doing
There's no
the
way
voiceover you're
they're going.
saying. He's just
He's
like
just doing the voice. I believe there's a Brazilian capoeira stuntman, Lafitte something
yeah.
something. He played Eddie Goro in the Tekken movie. I think he's the stunt guy in the suit, and it's just Pedro's voice. I'm pretty sure,
Except for the scenes where he takes off the helmet. Yeah.
except for the scenes where he takes off the helmet. Yeah.
I mean, I could believe that, like in the sense, because one, like if he has the helmet on, his lines are going to be muffled, so you're going to have to do voiceover anyway. So why even have him in the fucking suit? But like, you could just have him like record it a million miles away and then just add it later. Like, there's no reason for him
Yeah,
to be
why not?
there. You can get him for cheaper. I don't know how much he was, if he was very expensive at the time, but like, I'm sure he's expensive now. But you are right that there's no reason that he needs to be there.
The whole all the Mandalorians, they're all just like random stunt guys, and they like Katie Sackhoff does not need to be on set, like in wherever the fuck they shoot. She can be in the comfort of her own home or go to a nearby studio and just record what she needs to record, and that's it. They do not need to bring this woman out and fly her out and have all these expenses paid, a hotel, a trailer, blah 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 blah. They do not need to do that.
I mean, this is like Vin
but no,
Diesel. This is like getting Vin Diesel for Groot. Like, what's the point? Like, oh, it's Vin Diesel doing Groot. Like, who fucking cares? Like, who fucking like? It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't fucking matter that it's Vin Diesel for Groot. Like it, like, I've been seeing too much of Pedro's face yesterday. We don't need to see him in The Mandalorian. I mean, he is getting really overexposed right now. We're gonna have like the J Law situation where like people get tired of her. But he I mean, he's a really charismatic guy. He's kind of that I talk about like Clive Owen and stuff. He's like that. He's like ugly handsome. He's like ugly and handsome at the same time. Like this incredible like thing. You know what I'm talking about? It's just like this weird like he has so much like charisma, but at the same time you actually look at like Pedro Pascal, like he's not like, you know, fantastic looking, but he's got like so much, you know, that he becomes
I'm trying
handsome.
to clip that one rant. I'm trying to clip that one rant you had in the last podcast where how Bo-Katan is fucking ridiculous. Where I'm trying to clip it and make it as a short, but it's such a pain in the ass because it's fucking hilarious, your rant. Because you're right, like Bo-Katan just can't join this cult, this religion. She doesn't believe in the fucking religion. Like if you're gonna go and be a Christian or a Muslim, you have to like repent for your sins. But at the end of the day, you gotta believe in something. Bo-Katan doesn't believe in anything.
Yeah,
so.
it's the dumbest religion. It's the dumbest religion. Like it's not a religion. It's a rule. Like it's just not even a religion. It's a rule. Like, well, this is the way. Well, this is the way for what? Like, what is this mechanism? Like, is there a God? Do you believe in a God that is like putting down these like rules? Like you can't just have.
We came to the conclusion that they worship a giant helmet. That is.
They worship a giant helmet.
Essentially what.
And they need to be in the helmet. Why do you need to be in the helmet? It's the way. Like, but what?
Oh, you have to watch the episode tonight, like as soon as you can. There is a moment in the show. I know for a fact in episode 4. Do not spoil it for him. I will ban anyone who spoils it for him. There is a ridiculous moment where all the Mandalorians gather, like they're on a quest to do something. I won't spoil it. And Bo-Katan is there. And she goes, I won't tell you what happens in it, but at one point she's like, so what do we do here? And Din's like, well, we do this, this, and this. And she's like, oh. And I know for a fact you're going to hate it, and you're going to yell at it, and you're going to laugh because it's so stupid. I won't say what it is. But their religion gets even more fucking ridiculous, if you can believe that.
The religion is all about helmets and forges. That's it. Don't ask any questions. This is the way. Like any other ridiculous rule. Like let's you know, whether it be like, oh, you've got to wear a yarmulke, or you've got to wear a niqab, or some other like just pointless activity that's just like in a religion, like just utterly pointless. When you ask them and you boil it down, they're like, well, because God told me. And at the end of the day, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. I want to follow what God believes. Like, there's a fundamental reason behind it. It's usually a very bad reason, but at least it's a reason, right? Like, but like, we just wear a helmet. Like, why do you wear a helmet? Why? Tell me why you wear a helmet. Do you have a God? Like, what's the significance of the helmet? Like, is it an honor thing? Is it like, what function does it serve? It's the way. It's the way.
Real quick, there is. Did you hear about the? This is great. Did you hear about the theory, the idea that the reason Boba Fett fucked up killing Luke in Return of the Jedi is because R2 spiked his drink?
Huh.
So in on Jabba's barge, as they're
Yeah.
like going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the Sarlacc pit, you can clearly see that R2 is handing out drinks. Now, Boba
Yeah.
Fett is not a weirdo; he can take off his helmet. It is very likely that Boba Fett, who is chillaxing, having a good time, but he's still there because he wants to see things through, takes a drink. It's very possible that R2 spiked all the drinks that all the guards and the guests have like taken, because if you remember, as soon as things go down and Luke is swinging his saber, Boba Fett flies out there and he jumps right in front of Luke like an idiot, gets his like thing sliced, his gun sliced, and then at a certain point he has a clear shot at Luke who's fighting other guys, and he misses twice. This is remember whatever what I said like a while ago.
Yeah.
When the Empire wants something done, they hire like 3 guys: robot guy in turban, and Boba Fett. He's one of the baddest motherfuckers around. And you're telling me Boba Fett cannot shoot a young kid like 10 meters from him? Come on. The guy's like right there. You can just throw his shoe at him and still hit him. You're going to tell me Boba Fett missed his shots?
That makes a lot of sense, but why not just poison them all? I mean, right? He murders them all later, like by like just like destroying the bar, like all of those guests, like just Luke just murders them. Like, why not just like
okay,
just poison them all?
Okay. What if there was poison in there, but Boba Fett has ingested enough and altered his body enough to where he can resist most poisons? So it was meant to kill him, but instead it just slowed him down.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I also suppose if like people started dropping like flies, they might think that something was up. But yeah, I mean, all that works. But then again, I mean, would he be worried that Leia would accidentally drink some of the? I mean, I understand that she's a slave girl and everything, but like maybe she would have a drink or something.
No, she's on the job.
You know, and they would have had to tell Lando too, right, to not have any drinks.
No, they're on the job. They need to stay focused.
Everybody else is not on the job, but they're on the job. Like, I mean, that's the thing is
they got this in the bag.
Here's the thing: is Boba Fett is on the job. He's like on the clock. He's a hired guard. Like, is he going to be drinking? Like, you know, professional guards don't drink any beer when they're on the job. Like, would they just?
Is he on the job though? He already finished the job. He delivered Han Solo. He got paid. He's just hanging out.
I guess, but then why does he have his weapon? Why is he armed?
You gotta be prepared for any occasion.
Why does he have his helmet on? I mean,
because the ladies like a guy in a helmet. Come on, Preston, stop it. I don't know. You're asking questions. Fuck off. I don't know. I always keep the helmet on. The mystery. Ladies like the mystery.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, I mean, trying to find logic to Star Wars, where it's just like we're somehow rooting for a man who murders hundreds of innocent people, like at the beginning of the story, and we're like, yeah, he gets away, like in the worst plan ever,
Which guy?
Luke is the.
Oh, that's right. The terrorist.
You've heard my fucking Luke Skywalker, like Return of the Jedi is the worst movie in the world,
No, he's a terrorist. You're right.
He's just, I mean, this is how we're supposed to like this guy. Is he like, okay, here's my plan. Everybody gets captured. And then I murder everyone, including the civilians, women, children, everybody. They're just all dead. And they're like, how is this your plan, Luke? Like, why are we all getting captured? Like, trust me. Okay. You know? Like, what a plan. What a plan. Oh, man. What a horrible movie Return of the Jedi is. Oh, my God. Poison isn't a Jedi method, but killing civilians is. Murdering civilians, Jedi method.
Yes.
But not poison. Like, what? That is the way. Like, who's to say poison isn't a Jedi method? What do we know about Jedis? We know nothing about Jedis. Apparently, they murder people. They murder civilians for no reason. So of course they're gonna poison people. Jedis are dickheads. How do Ironborn survive? Can't raid Westerlands during Tywin or the North while Theon is a ward. Essos is too far away to bring back food. Must be a highway of ships all the time. Just farmers. So this was brought up. I was once when I was in Sweden. I was talking to a Swede, and he's like, I don't know why the people talk about this Viking shit all the time. Like 1% of people were Vikings. Like you can't have everybody be a raider. Like that's not how society would fall apart. Like there's such Vikings. Like Viking history is such a non-real part of real Scandinavian history that everyone like makes into Scandinavian history. And he just like went on a rant, and he's just like, it's so stupid that the rest of the world sees this way. It's so stupid that we prop this up. Like that's not like they were nobodies. Like they were like a very, very small segment. And it's the same thing happened with the Ironborn. Like they made reaving this like huge aspect of their society, but it can't be a huge aspect of their society. Like most Ironborn need to be farmers and miners. Like that's in reality the majority of who they are. And so you could maybe claim that just House Greyjoy are the ones that do not sow, but then you find all these other like houses are into this shit. And you know, George tries to explain it that they sail all the way to the Stepstones to do their reaving, which is stupid. Like that's just way too far. That's way too far for all of these people to go. So it just goes to show, like it's just not thought. It's not thought through by George that you would have this like island that has this like culture of reaving that just could not possibly exist. Like it's just ridiculous kind of idea. Like even if you like take the Viking Swede thing, imagine if Vikings had to sail like all the way to Angola to do their reaving. Like you'd be like, oh my God, like that's a real pain in the butt. Like it's dumb. It's like George didn't think it through. It's thought through even less in the show, where they're just like at least George has farmers and invents the Harlaws and has like regular people being normal. Like the numbers are off, but at least he has normal people. In the show, there's just no normal people. They're all just buffoons. Like, and it's not sustainable. You can only have a very, very, very small segment of a population be like survive on raiding. Like ridiculous. Hey Preston, do you mind remaking and updating your Dragons of War and Genetics video? I mean, it's a lot of work. Like, hey Preston, would you mind putting in like, 80 hours of work on something? Like, oh really? Okay. It's like when somebody gives me a book and they're like, oh yeah, you should read this book. Oh, thanks. It's a lot of work. But like redoing videos is it's a lot of work. It's probably not something like I understand like the desire to like, because it was done before Fire and Blood even came out. So I mean it mostly holds up, but I think there's like extra people that are added to the family tree and stuff. So, but it's a lot of work to redo videos. All right, just a few more. I've been on here a while, and Carmine's been on here with me for a while too. What if in the neck there was an even bigger wall and Moat Cailin, and the First Men invasion was equivalent to the Night Fort? Neck seems like the gift. There is some evidence of like really huge blocks. Like there are these enormous blocks that are not explained. Additionally, the blocks are black, which implies that they're made of basalt, and there's no like volcanic activity in that area. It's in a swamp. So like nothing really makes sense about like where these blocks are from and what's going on. There could very well have been another wall there. Whatever pre-civilization existed is not explained. George like will write a bunch of stuff for Atmosphere and it doesn't make any sense. But Crimea River for the Space Nazi Youth. These were just like people that went to a party. The band. You can't save everyone. It wasn't even about saving everyone, okay? They were all on a barge, and Luke turns the gun towards the ground and fires the gun and explodes the barge for no reason. He murders everyone for no reason. Jabba is dead. He was choked to death. Luke points the gun at the barge and blows it up, murdering hundreds of people for no reason. It's not on Jabba. It's not like
he has to make sure those guys can't follow him.
Who? There's a bunch of party guests. Like, who would do this?
They're not innocent party guests. The party guests that would attend like one of the most notorious gangsters in the galaxy's party they're going to be like armed. They're going to be dangerous. They're not just normal party guests.
Max Rebo and his band are there.
They survived. Stop it.
I mean,
they survived. They saw the writing on the wall.
I mean, look, I understand that Boba Fett somehow, I mean, not Boba Fett, Bib Fortuna and Max Rebo like appear later. Somehow, after they somehow survive. I don't know how, considering he like points the gun at the deck and the whole barge blows up into a bunch of smithereens. And even if it didn't, they're in the middle of the desert. Like, how are you getting back, like, to civilization? Like, I don't understand. But, like, you just like, no, this is a fucking murder. Yeah. Iron Man confessed. Yes, they do that too.
I love Tony's reply here. You saw the movie like once, didn't you?
Was that to me? Like,
yeah,
I've seen this movie. I've seen Return of the Jedi fucking like 75 times. Okay, I've seen it a fucking lot. They're like, there's no reason. Like, he was slicing up everybody on top, dropping them in, and then he just like blows up the barge and kills them all. Like, you know nothing about Jabba's crew. Jabba's crew are awesome. You know nothing about them. You know? You could be in economic hard times and they just like I'm just saying, like, equivalent situation. Let's say like let's say big, drug dealer like hosts a party at the Olive Garden, okay? And there's all sorts of people there, like friends and family, people that work at the Olive Garden. Like, there's a band, and you go in and you like burn the Olive Garden down, okay? You murder the janitors, the cook, the waitresses, the waiters, like the friends and family, the cousins, do you think you'd be a good person? You'd be like, well, they shouldn't have gone to the Olive Garden where a drug dealer had hosted a party.
Like, hosted the party at the Olive Garden?
I'm just picking that up.
Was he slinging Tylenol? What is it?
Fine, cheesecake factory. It doesn't matter, man. Doesn't matter. Okay? I'm just saying, like, the guy, do you think the pilot of the barge, like, you think the janitor at the barge, like, do you think these guys, like, are bad people because they like, clean the toilets? He definitely killed the slave girls, the dancing slave girls. Like, the band, like, Max Rebo's band. Like, they were all on that barge and they were all died. Like, it's ridiculous. Preston has close personal friends or the friends of Java's Mafia. No, I'm just saying it's just really weird. It's just really weird that he's like he would bother doing this. The only reason I'm asking is to add a lot of context to our newest videos over analyzing House of the Dragon. I know, I understand. But for the most part, the thesis still holds up. I think that the redoing it adds like extra family members and stuff like that, and discussions about like where the extra family members went, and I think there are maybe some discussions about like Aegon and Aemon and Balon, like and those things being passed over and stuff like that, and there's a lot more on Rhaenys and stuff like that, but I'd have to look at it again, but it's just so many things are on the docket. The old town triad were anti-Targ with the High Towers trying to steal the dragon gene. I think that I mean, it's right during this period of time where you may be continuing dragon riding with a high tower takeover, but you're not so much continuing dragon hatching. And I understand like the weirdness of Aegon marrying Helena, and that was ordered by Viserys, but like those twins and stuff like that continuing on, like a possibility that one of those kids could be another dragon hatcher and stuff like that, and the danger that poses. But there does, the dragons did start dying off and couldn't be hatched anymore after the certain lineage did happen. Once Rhaenyra and Rhaenys were kind of taken out of the picture, so it's I think it's almost impossible to determine what the High Towers were doing. Were they trying to steal dragons for themselves? Were they shifting things, or were they doing this all to get rid of dragons? I don't know. Because if they have their own dragon, hatching abilities, or dragon riding abilities, then it makes things complicated. I guess we'll never find out. We'll never find out. It could be that the High Towers and the Citadel have a different agendas, but we'll see. All right, Carmine. Anything else before we go?
No, not really. You got to watch Mando. I know people are like getting on your case for watching Succession. They're getting on my case too. I hear like the latest season is like really good. I don't know. I feel like it's not up my alley.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It's all right.
Because, by the way, this guy Merc here has been asking to do the Telltale Game of Thrones game. If I've been trying to find the Mac version. Do you still have the old computer where you deleted the thing from? Because there are programs that can allow you to go
find
into
it again.
Yeah, there are programs that allow you to do that.
I do have that computer.
So if you have it,
yeah, it's in America right now. That computer is in America right now. But yeah, it exists.
So pick that. I will continue trying to find the one on Mac. By the way, I update on the thing we spoke about last week about trying to find you on Jenny Jones.
Yeah.
Or was it Jenny Jones?
Yeah, it was Jenny Jones.
I could not find you at all. There are almost no episode archives of that show at all. They have some of like the biggest excuse me. They have some of like the biggest episodes. Like apparently there was a guy who got ambushed on there that another man had a crush on him, so he went ballistic and killed that guy.
Yeah.
Like that's of course everyone like remembers that episode, but one of the many paternity test episodes nobody really cares.
Yeah, no way you're finding me. No way you're finding me on Jenny Jones asking that question.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
All right, man. I will talk to you all later. Thanks for everyone for chilling out. and we'll see you guys next time. Later.